Chapter 1. Into the Backrooms, the original novel. Prologue. Okay guys, I think we'll get a wide shot and then wrap it up. The lead friend who was directing our movie announced to the group. I nodded and took a couple of steps back, adjusting the angle of the camera to capture a better wide shot of the large cargo crate we were filming in front of. The sizable metal shipping canister gradually shrank as I backed up a few feet, attempting to capture a wider shot for our action movie. "A little further, cameraman," he said as he motioned for me to take a couple more steps back, using hand signals to guide me. I nodded in response and began walking backwards again. The gravel scattered on the concrete platform used for holding shipping cargo, crunching beneath my feet as I aimed for the perfect shot. I did my best to maintain stability and avoid shaking the camera, but the uneven ground with its grooves and dips made it increasingly challenging. As I walked, my focus shifted between the small screen on the camera checking the shot and the ground beneath me. Suddenly, my left foot got caught in my shoelaces, throwing off my balance. I stumbled backwards, my body unable to regain stability on the rigid ground. The cuffs of my blue jeans got scuffed under my heel, restricting my movement and exasperating the fall. Shocked, I tightened my grip on the camera's handle, desperately trying to protect the valuable equipment. In those brief seconds, I made eye contact with my best friend before my right elbow crashed into the concrete platform with a crunch. The rest of my body swiftly followed, the impact sending a sharp, burning pain through my right side. The back of my head also struck the concrete, causing excruciating pain and leaving my hair soaked in fresh blood. A loud ringing noise filled my ears as my vision flickered in and out. Before I could react further, my consciousness waned, and darkness enveloped me. The last thing I saw was my friends rushing over to me, their faces filled with concern after witnessing my brutal fall. I managed a weak smile before reality slipped away and everything went dark. The last thing I felt was my body making contact with the shipyard floor before it phased through reality and entered a new one. For a split second, I was inside of a black void. Barely conscious as my body drifted through the empty, shadowy landscape. For a moment, I was in a space of nothingness, a vacant, empty sea of ethereal darkness. I felt nothing, saw nothing. I didn't even remember my name at that moment. It felt like every thought and memory I had was being torn from my very being. Before I could even begin to comprehend my current state, I was gone. It all went black with the growing buzz of fluorescent tube lights subtly draining my senses from the other side. I had officially no-clipped out of my reality, and where I was a completely new mystery waiting to be solved. I groaned in pain as my senses gradually returned. The pungent stench of mildew and damp carpet filled my nostrils as I began to take in my surroundings. A sickening feeling bubbled forth in my stomach as I realized I was laying on the moist, debris-filled carpet that I was smelling. The wetness clung to my hands and face, adding to the discomfort. Where am I? I mumbled, slowly opening my eyes. Each blink dislodged fragments of the crusty buildup that had accumulated on my eyelashes while I was unconscious. My vision remained blurry, and it pained me to keep my eyes open due to the crusty residue causing irritation. The front of my jeans were soaked, and I still couldn't ignore the fact that the carpet beneath me was damp and squishy, permeating my clothes and skin over time. The pervasive odor of mildew and decay filled the air, intensified by the moist carpet. I glanced at the camera in my hands and noticed that it was still recording, its lens unscathed after the scuffle it had with the shipyard's concrete. Squinting at the viewfinder, I observed a scene that resembled a 1980s-style office hallway, with numerous rooms stretching on endlessly. The pale yellow walls seemed to extend for miles, all adorned with the same arrow-patterned wallpaper. Rectangular white lights lined the ceiling, reminiscent of those found in school hallways or old hospitals. Then it hit me. The constant hum of fluorescent lights invaded my consciousness, filling my mind with its relentless buzzing. It was merciless. I had only been conscious in this place for a few minutes, yet the incessant noise was already gnawing at my sanity. Gripping the camera tightly with my right hand, I slowly rose to my feet. My legs burned as my muscles reawakened, having been tense and still for an indeterminable amount of time. I rubbed my eyes to remove the last remnants of crust, allowing my vision to clear. As the blurriness subsided, I realized that the footage on the camera had not deceived me. I was indeed surrounded by pale yellow walls, each adorned with a peculiar upward arrow pattern. The seemingly endless hallway stretched far beyond my sight. Overhead, rectangular white fluorescent lights lined the ceiling, with occasional flickers interrupting the steady illumination. The fuck is this? I grumbled with buried paranoia. I didn't know where I was. Not only that, but my own voice sounded unnatural and foreign to me. I hated it. Hello? I cried, desperately hoping for a response. Silence greeted my call, amplifying the growing fears lurking within me. A sudden dryness formed in my mouth and then a sharp soreness at the back of my throat. The absence of water set me on a path of worsening dehydration. The relentless buzzing of the fluorescent lights intensified, drilling into my brain like a raging jackhammer. The extra prevailing silence surrounding me felt suffocating. Summoning courage, I took a cautious step forward, only to gag as my gym shoes sunk into the moist carpet. The repulsive texture just beneath my feet renewed the sickening sensation in my stomach, overwhelming my senses. I need to escape from here. I have to find something. Otherwise, I'll just lose my mind. I'll go completely insane, I said aloud to myself, the urgency in my voice rising. With determination, I started speed walking down the seemingly endless hallway in front of me. However, my legs soon grew weary and sore from the rapid movement, forcing me to gradually come to a halt. When I turned around, expecting to see the room I had come from, it was nowhere to be found. Feelings of uneasiness crashed over me in waves as I tightened my grip on the camera, my gaze darting nervously around my current surroundings. What? I'm already lost, I choked out, panic seeping into my voice. How am I already lost? I said with a fearful tone. My eyes darted around frantically, desperately searching for any signs or clues. I spun around in a full 360-degree circle, only to be met with an overwhelming sight. Endless hallways branching off into the distance, stretching infinitely as far as my eyes could see. A sense of disorientating hopelessness washed over me, leaving me feeling trapped in this enigmatic place. I need to find a way out. How do I escape? I said hoarsely, my voice laced with desperation. Without further hesitation, I broke into a run. The pale yellow walls blurred into a mix of yellow and white streaks as I sprinted through the winding corridors with all my might. The incessant buzz of the dim white lights overhead seemed to dig deeper into my mind, amplifying the noise to an unbearable level within my head. I'm gonna go insane. Let me out! I cried as I turned around and began to run back in the direction I came from. Let me out! I screamed as I turned around and began running down the hallway to my left. The realization that there were no complete dead ends in this place slammed into my thoughts like a freight train. Let me out! Let me the fuck out! I screamed as loudly as I could. I slowly stumbled forwards, came to a stop in the middle of the empty corridor. I choked back tears as my throat felt like it was closing up. I took a deep breath in and looked around. Let me out, please, I said sadly as I collapsed against the wall and sank to the floor. Tears filled my eyes as I looked down the hallway that stretched endlessly on from both left and right. The corridors never end, I thought to myself as I realized that I wasn't in the hallway I was just in. The rooms were constantly changing themselves. I was never going to escape unless I adapted and learned how to survive in here. What is this place? Where the hell is everybody? What if I never get out? Why am I here? How did I get here? Is this in prison? Am I in danger? I asked in a rushed panic as hundreds more questions bounced around in my head. I looked at the camera in my hands to realize it was still rolling. The footage, I said as a glimmer of hope sprung forward in my mind. I wound back the tape only to see that it had abruptly stopped when I fell and started up again when I woke up here. What? How did... I stammered as I realized there was no explanation to how I got here and what this place was. I just knew that I fell while shooting the movie with my friends and then I was here. There were no answers available to me right now, and there very well might never be. There has to be a way out. This isn't possible. I have to be dreaming. Yeah, I hit my head when I fell and I'm dreaming. In the hospital or something, and I'm just in a state of hallucinogenical. Fuck, what am I saying? I said to myself as I slowly got to my feet. So I just have to wake up, right? I said slowly as I stared at the wall in front of me. You never die in a dream, so what if I just died and was forced to wake up? Is that even possible? I guess it could be, I said to myself as I prepared for what I was about to do next. So maybe if I hit the wall hard enough, I'll die and wake up, I said as I gripped the camera in my right hand and took a couple steps back. Well, fuck all. Here goes nothing, I said nervously as I ran at the wall as fast as I could. I hit the wall with a sickening crack and almost instantly pain exploded down my arm as my right shoulder connected with the wall at full force. I groaned in pain and stumbled back, barely holding the camera in my hands. Again, I said slowly as I ran at the wall a second time without thinking about the possible consequences. I hit the wall with a thud, my body bouncing off the solid surface like a basketball going off the backboard. My head spun as I stumbled back and fell onto the carpet with a dampened thud. The camera fell from my hands as my body grew weak. At that moment I realized I was not in fact dreaming. Or at least I couldn't wake myself up. No more. It's not working, I said weakly as I struggled to get up. My whole right side burned with pain as I slowly got to my feet. I leaned down and picked up the camera, trying to stay on my feet as waves of pain and fatigue crashed over me. I began to slowly walk down the hallway, my shoulder flaring with pain as my head spun. There has to be a way out. I mean, I can't be trapped here forever, right? I don't want to be, I whispered as I slowly came to a stop. My body felt weaker than before, and I looked at my stomach to realize I was starving. I need food, I said weakly as I slowly stumbled down the hallway, hoping to find a room or a help desk or something, anything. Hello, is anyone there? Anyone here, please? I need help. Someone. Please. I trailed off as the feeling of dread sank in, sadness and loneliness filling my thoughts. I'm alone, I whispered to myself as I turned to the right and looked down the hallway in front of me. I shivered as chills went through my entire body. Fidgeted with the camera's handle with my thumb as I held the grip attachment lightly. I looked around nervously as goosebumps began to creep up my arms and legs. Hello, is someone there, please? Can anyone hear me? I cried out as I stared hopelessly down the empty, endless corridors. I gasped as I heard a faint whistle in the distance. A person? I said to myself as I began to quickly make my way towards the sound. The lights buzzed in the background and I thought nothing of it at this point. Just wanted out. Hello, if you're there, whistle again! I cried, no answer. Did you hear me? I screamed, no response. The feelings of dread quickly returned as I realized they weren't going to answer me. I can still follow the whistle, I said to myself as I attempted to hold on to the little hope of escape I had left. I began to walk down the hallway again, following where I last heard the whistle. I turned left and realized I was back where I was 5 minutes ago. Panic began to set in as I realized I'd made a full circle. How? I was going straight. How did I even... Why? What did I do? Let me out! I screamed as I ran down the hallway, rage and upsetment flaring deep inside of me. I looked around and screamed as loud as I could. Let me out! I know you're there! Let me out! Why am I here? What did I do to you? Tears welled up in my eyes as I ran to every doorway and looked inside, hoping someone heard me. Nothing. No one. The lights flickered as I slowly made my way to the closest wall and sank to the floor. I'm never getting out of here, am I? I'm stuck in this place forever. I'll die soon because of starvation or exhaustion. I'm too weak to carry on. I don't even know where I am. I have nothing. I'm alone, and I need answers, okay? I said to myself sadly as I trailed off. Millions of thoughts and realizations sunk into my mind as I realized the constant humming noise had diminished in volume. The lights flickered and buzzed unevenly. What the hell? I said slowly as I got back to my feet. My leg muscles burned with pain from the large amounts of movement and lack of nourishment. Chills spread through my entire body almost instantly as the feeling that I wasn't safe nor alone anymore reached my sixth sense. Is someone there? I called out, secretly hoping that this time I wouldn't get an answer. Silence. Hello! I was cut off by a loud scream from behind. I wouldn't get an answer this time. The answer had found me. Chills shot up my spine as the blood-curdling shriek blew out my eardrums. I turned around as adrenaline instantly entered my bloodstream. I had laid eyes on a terrifying creature running right at me. What the fuck is... I barely had time to ask questions as the creature quickly closed the gap between itself and its prey. Closer. I turned around and began to run as fast as I could. The lights flickered frantically above me as I sprinted down multiple hallways, turning at corners whenever I could. The screams grew even louder as I looked behind me, only to see the creature was quickly gaining. The thing was made out of black wires and rods, like something you'd see on a tripod stand. Its head looked like a security camera and video camera had merged together, a large hole lined with sharp metal spikes in the front. Is that its mouth? I thought as I ran faster. The creature screamed loudly behind me as I made the sharp turn around the corner. My body grew weak as hunger set in, weakening my muscles and draining my stamina. The walls became a yellow blur as I ran as fast as I could. Always endless! I cried as I struggled to breathe. My lungs burned as I began to slow down. The The lights flickered and then became normal again as the screams slowly stopped. I slowly sprinted forwards before falling to the ground, gasping for air. What the fuck was that thing? I cried as I looked behind me. The monster was gone. I looked at the camera in my hands and shuddered as I realized that thing had chased me for well over 15 minutes. It was persistent in its attacks. Why is that thing here? I said slowly as I tried to take in as much air as I could. My lungs burned and I cried out in pain as a sharp stabbing feeling pierced my chest. I slowed my breathing and tried not to pass out. My entire body felt weak. I can't keep doing this. I'm starving. Exhausted. I'll die, I said between breaths. The constant buzz slowly returned as the lights went back to normal they were when I got here. My vision slowly faded in and out as I struggled to keep my consciousness. I can't, I said slowly before everything went black. Chapter 2. The Trap. I woke up to see the pale yellow wall surrounding me again. I'm back at the beginning, I said as my memory slowly began to come back to me. My vision slowly cleared and I could see I was in fact back where I started. Wait. But I died because of exhaustion, though. How did I... It trailed off as I realized I had more than one life in this place somehow. Well, at least for now. But now I don't have all that progress through the maze of tunnels, I said sadly. I looked down to see the camera still rolling. But there's still a chance for me to get out of here, I said slowly as I got to my feet. And I don't know what to look out for. Well, I do, actually. I do know what to look out for, but I know more about this place than I did before, so that's a good thing. I looked around to see I was alone, at least for now. I have to find a checkpoint, or an outpost, or building, or something. This place can't be infinite. That's not humanly possible, not physically possible. I began to walk towards the doorway in the opposite direction of the doorway I went through when I first got here. I know what to avoid, I said slowly as I turned around to check that I was still alone and safe. But that doesn't mean whatever that thing is still can't find me in this place. I can't let my guard down here. I gripped the camera tightly and began to quickly make my way forwards, slowly progressing through the first sets of corridors. An exit. I just need an exit, right? That's all I need. Every place has an exit, I said to myself as I began to run. I sprinted as fast as I could, glancing down every hallway and into every corridor, and every doorway. It all stretched on, as if it was in fact fully infinite. I glanced to the right and almost tripped as I spotted a green light in the distance. An exit door! There is a chance! I knew it! I cried as I kicked off the ground, the wet old carpet squishing as I went full sprint for the green light. The walls quickly became a blur as I pumped my legs and pushed off more with every footfall. I slowed down as I tried to catch my breath and looked up. The green light flickered in the distance and I could make out what looked like the entrance of a large kiddie slide. I took a deep breath and began running again, the camera bouncing against my leg as I gripped it tightly in my right hand. I'm almost there, I cried as the green glow became clearer, along with the red outline of the slide entrance. I began to slow as I gasped for air and froze as the sounds I heard before drove into the back of my head. Fuck! Not now, I'm so freaking close, you stupid bastard! I cried as I instantly began running again. The monster's killing screech grew louder and I knew it was gaining on me, quickly closing the gap between it and its meal. I darted left as the slide disappeared from my view, feelings of dread and despair slowly beginning to set in as I realized I was going away from the exit. You fucking idiot. Now you're going away from the exit? What the fuck? I muttered as I looked behind me. The creature screeched and speed up. Why the fuck are you so fast? I cried as I tried as hard as I could to run faster than the unknown being chasing me. The lights flickered and the walls seemed as if they were melting away as everything became a blur. I have to turn around. That slide is literally my only way out right now, I said to myself as I darted right. The hallways seemed to stretch on as I ran past the entrances of thousands and thousands of corridors, thousands of hallways, and thousands of traps. I cried out as I slid on the carpet and lost control. I slammed into the ground, in the wall, pushed off, forcing myself to not stop running. I darted right, knowing I had injured my shoulder badly for a second time, and gasped as a blurry green light appeared in my distance. Yes! I cried as I looked behind me. The monster had stopped and locked its gaze in my direction. Sick feelings slowly grew in my stomach as I realized it was watching me, as if it knew something I didn't. The feeling of doubt on my decision began to creep into my thoughts as I watched the creature behind me rather than watching to see if it was in front of me. Before I could turn around, I slammed into the wall and spun off, crashing to the ground before rolling to a stop. I groaned in pain as my vision faded in and out. My entire right side burned with excruciating pain as my right shoulder absorbed the shock from the impact of the wall. I looked down the hallway as I tried to get to my feet, only to see the monster had disappeared. I inhaled and winced in pain as a sharp pain shot through my chest. My lungs burned as I felt like my entire body was shutting down and collapsing in on itself. The light slowly became blurry as I struggled to stay conscious. I slowly got to my hands and knees, picked up the camera. The constant buzz of the lights drilled into my thoughts, the sound quickly beginning to overwhelm me. I crawled over to the nearest wall and lay back against it, trying to counter the waves of pain that were crashing over me. Fucking hell. I'm being stupid. I need to watch where I'm going. Now I'm not going to have full strength to run or fight for a while. Really hope I don't run into that thing again, I muttered as I looked down at the camera. The film was still rolling, even after the camera was slammed into the wall at full force. How is the camera not broken? I mumbled as I observed the lens in the film compartment. The camera was fine. Not even a scratch. There was no signs of damage anywhere on the entire camera. I turned the camera over in my hands and looked up at the green light. The light was coming from a glowing green arrow that was pointing down at the slide. Huge red question marks painted in red lined the slide entrance with a faded outline around them, as if they'd been there for so long that the paint inside the border had just faded away. Slowly got to my feet and looked at the slide. The giant red tube was built inside the wall, as if it was meant to be there. I slowly limped over and looked down the tunnel to see that it was pitch black inside. It looks endless, I mumbled to myself as the thoughts entering my head just emerged at this point because of the amount of loneliness I was experiencing. I jumped and stumbled backwards as a large red entity screamed behind me, cried out as I began to fall back into the slide. The entity was flailing its arms like some random SCP I'd seen on the internet at some point. Its skin was blotchy in a dark pale shade of red. The entity had no eyes and was running at me at full speed. Its torso was long and the entity's head almost reached the ceiling. Its large feet kicked off the carpet, slapping against the floor as it picked up speed. I gripped the camera with one hand as I tried to grab the walls of the slide. I watched as my fingers grazed the front of the slide entrance before I fell backwards, picking up speed immediately as I fell head first down the dark red tube. I screamed as I tried to grab the walls, only to pick up speed and go down even quicker. Only seconds passed before I was bathed in darkness, surrounded by the shadows filling the endless tube. I tried to turn around and slid on the walls before rotating sideways and hitting my head on the slide wall. I tried to press my feet onto the walls to slow myself down, but the efforts failed. I was going down too fast to stop myself. "Help me!" I screamed as I tried to grab the walls, trying to find a way to slow myself down. I finally got myself going feet first and screamed as I spotted the large gaping mouth at the end of the slide. The mouth was lined with hundreds of razor-sharp teeth and the inside was pitch black. This slide was an entity of its own. I dug my heels into the slide bottom as I attempted to avoid dying another time over something so stupid. It was a slide, for crying out loud. I pressed my shoulder against the wall in an attempt to stop myself with friction, but this wasn't working. "What the fuck? Why is this place like this?" I screamed as the entity's mouth grew closer. More so, I got closer to it. "Stop it! I'm not fucking dying again!" I dug my fingers into the little grooves connecting every piece of the tube as I tried every way possible to evade the oncoming death. Glanced back now to see how close I was and screamed as I quickly closed the gap, the entity being only a few feet away from me. I clawed at the slippery, smooth plastic in a final attempt to save myself, but failed. "What the fuck is wrong with this place?" I screamed as my feet disappeared first into the entity's mouth. I looked behind me hopelessly as I was swallowed by the slide. Chapter 3. False Hope. I groaned as I slowly regained my senses for the third time and looked around me. The same room, but something wasn't right. "Is it not the same this time?" I said slowly as my vision cleared. The lights blinked on and off and I realized I was somewhere else. "It looks the same, but it feels different," I said slowly as I got to my feet. I still had the camera somehow. "Did I enter another area through the slide, or did I do something to get here?" I said as I looked around. The walls, the lights, the carpet, it was all the same, but something felt different. This place must have more than one room, so there has to be a way to easily get from room to room, right? That way is probably also how I got there, and here. I slowly began walking forwards. heading for the first doorway before I stopped in the doorframe. The hallway in front of me stretched on endlessly, millions of other corridors and rooms branching off of it. This place really might be infinite. It's not Earth and somewhere else, I said as I looked down at my camera that I held on to the entire time I'd been here, from the very second I got here in the beginning to now. I can escape, though. It'll take time, but there has to be a way out of this place, I said as I stared down the endless hallways in front of me. But until then, I'll document all of it, record all the monsters and entities I find, write down everything, record the rooms and traps, find stuff to watch out for, find an exit, find my way out of this place, whatever it is, I said as I looked around. Nothing but endless halls that all link together for hundreds of thousands of miles. I guess I'll just go straight. Maybe there's an outpost or something down here. I glanced behind me at the room I arrived in and shook my head. That room would quickly be gone as I went further in, disappearing into the endless maze as I got deeper and deeper into the level. I pointed my gaze straight ahead and began to run, careful to monitor my hunger and my energy levels this time so I wouldn't make the painful mistake of starving to death any more times than I needed to. Pushing myself to the point of exhaustion where I died. I didn't want to go through that again. I looked down each hallway as I ran, checking for changes in light or color, maybe even in hopes of finding other people or a peaceful entity of sorts. I'd already run into a few hostile ones. Nothing but endless halls answered my burning questions about this place. The constant hum of the fluorescent lights began to make its way back to the front of my brain as I sprinted down the main hallway, staying in a straight line so I could find my way back. This place really does make you insane, I muttered as I shook my head, hoping to shake away the constant humming that was driving into my brain. It's all the same, I said to myself as I looked down multiple endless corridors, both left and right, only to see no differences anywhere. If it's all the same, why does it not feel safe? Like something changed, yet the surrounding environment was kept the same as before. It doesn't make sense, I cried as I came to a stop in the middle of a small, cube-shaped room. How is there no end? I screamed as I turned in a circle, looking down every hall, every corridor, only to see the same thing. A vast infinite maze of similar hallways and flickering lights. I turned back to the main path to see it still stretched on. Even after running for as long as possible, there was still no visible end. I can't take it. I need to find a way back to my reality, back to sanity. I just want to leave, I said as I slowly trailed off until I was silent. I knew that I wasn't going to find any escape anytime soon. There was a chance I'd never get out of here. My reality wasn't mine anymore. Now I was part of a new one. Part of one I'd never get out of. A new reality full of danger and infinite rooms. A reality I would most likely never escape. I gotta find an elevator or a door, maybe another slide. That's probably a bad idea. Just an exit. A person. Where is everyone? What if I'm the only one here? What if there's no end? What if I'm stuck here forever? Will I ever go home? I said to myself as I stared mindlessly down the endless hallway I was in, not thinking about what was going on around me and just speaking the fears that were bouncing around in my head. I gotta continue, I said after I had stared blankly down the hallway for well over a minute. I snapped back my focus of getting back to the end of the corridor and took a shaky deep breath. Just keep running forwards, I said to myself as I began to run. Walking first, then sprinting down the empty corridor. Running through the empty pathway, my lungs slowly began to burn as I picked up speed. The pale yellow hallways quickly became a blur as I sprinted down the endless hallway in hopes of finding a way out. Something's wrong, I said as I slowed to a stop. I panted. The hair on the back of my neck stood up as chills went through my entire body. I looked around, trying to spot any entities or danger. Nothing. I gotta go, now. But something's not right. I looked around before kicking off the carpet and sprinting down the empty corridor. The corridor seemed fuller than it had originally. The constant hum of the lights slowly faded back to the back of my mind as I racked my brain for a solution of what could happen at that moment. At any moment, I came to a stop again and froze as a brisk, soft chill shot through my entire body in seconds. Hello? I called down the empty hallway in front of me. The loud buzz of the lights was my only response. Hello? Is someone there? I cried as I stared down the empty hallway nervously, not wanting to move. No answer. The constant hum of the lights began to drown out my thoughts as I grew louder and louder in my head. I gotta get out. Feels as though I'm being watched, I mumbled as I nervously looked around me. The air grew cold around me, and I instantly began to run. I didn't have any idea where I was going or what I was running from, but I didn't want to find out. I didn't want to restart. I looked behind me to see an empty hallway. I slowly came to a stop to see I had veered off course and was now completely lost. What the fuck? So stupid. God, now I have no idea what to do. I lost the main hallway, I muttered as I looked down the infinite maze of rooms in front of me. No way out, I said quietly as I looked down at the camera in my hands. I had no idea what time it was, or the day. I was completely lost on where I was in reality I didn't know anything about. I need a clock. Or a weapon, yeah, a gun or something. I'm vulnerable to attacks from anything. I'm completely unprotected in a place infested with danger, it seems. Goosebumps began to creep along the back of my neck as I looked up to see the flickering lights. We'll ignore that. As I looked up to see the lights flickering like crazy in a hallway just about 30 feet away. Just what I needed, I said to myself as I turned around, facing a completely random corridor. I'm gonna fucking die here, I muttered as I kicked off the moist carpet and began to run. The constant hum of the fluorescent lights began to get louder and louder, the noise filling my brain and drowning out any sanity I had left. I glanced back to see the flickering lights had stopped. I slowed down and stared at the corridor I just ran from, gasping for air. Why is it gone? Where'd it go? I said in between breaths. The air behind me grew colder as I shivered as chills went through my entire body. I quickly turned around and screamed as I came face to face with the new entity. The creature exhaled, sending a wave of hot air directly into my face. Fuck. Don't move, I said quietly to myself, my body impaled with fear. Not even remembering the entity in the moment I said it, I just wanted to stay alive. The entity looked around, trying to see what had made the noise, as I immediately realized that the thing was blind. It hadn't seen me, it had only felt me and heard me. I looked up as I slowed my breathing to be almost silent. I stared directly at the entity's head. It had no eyes, just a large white mouth lined with hundreds of razor-sharp teeth. The entity looked around and began to move directly at me. I took a step back and froze as the entity immediately focused its gaze on my foot. It senses vibrations, I thought to myself as I held my breath in my lungs, hoping I wouldn't make noise by breathing. My lungs burned and my eyes welled up with tears as the pain in my chest flared. My head pounded as I struggled to stay conscious. It's not worth it. Breathe. I slowly let the air out of my lungs and looked up to see if the entity had heard me. The problem was that the entity had disappeared. I had lost track of the creature. It was gone. Chapter 4. Silent Death. I quickly began looking around, trying to spot the entity and find its whereabouts. Nothing. It had vanished from my view, and the second I made noise, I knew it would attack. Great. Can't move, or breathe, or run, or anything, because that thing will kill me the second I do, I thought to myself as I slowly and carefully inhaled, trying to make as little noise as humanly possible. The sounds of the lights had become a background noise as I focused my attention on the noise of my immediate surroundings. Don't make noise. Such a fun entity, I thought to myself sarcastically as I tried to turn my body around without making any sound. I looked behind me to see the lights flickering crazily and took note that the lights may have flickered when the entity is nearby. It makes the lights have a seizure when it's by them. That's why the lights went crazy before. The difference is the entity. Everything else is normal, I said quietly to myself. I realized what I had done and instantly looked behind me. The flickering lights had stopped. Fuck, I mumbled as I quickly turned around. My throat closed and my heartbeat sped up as I came face to face with the entity again. The creature wailed loudly as if it was in pain from the fact that it couldn't stop the noises around it. I held my breath as I tried to avoid having a seizure or a panic attack from the flashing lights. The fluorescent lights above me were going crazy as the air grew colder and colder. I closed my eyes and whimpered in pain as anxiety flared in my chest and a migraine crept into my brain from the lack of oxygen. Then it was gone. I opened my eyes and looked around nervously, trying to see if I could figure out where the entity had gone. My vision was blurry and discolored as my head pounded from the reaction given by the flashing lights and the abrupt change in temperature. I'm not going to be able to do this much longer. I'll go insane or pass out, whichever one comes first, I guess, I whispered to myself as I carefully looked around and then took a slow step back forwards. My foot slowly lowered to the ground as I went from balancing on the front of my foot to lowering my heel until slowly slowly until I was balanced fully again. I looked around to see if the entity had heard me and saw nothing. Again, I said quietly to myself as I exhaled slowly. Tension set itself in multiple areas of my body as my heart pounded in my ears. I glanced left and right and then repeated the process. I had just done with a bit more speed. Chills ran down my neck as I froze halfway through the step. The air around me was growing cold. No, not now, I hissed as I looked behind me, around me, trying to see where it was. I slowly relaxed a bit and lowered my foot to the ground as I kept looking for the entity. Where is it? I hissed as I looked around frantically. The lights hummed loudly and grew in brightness before the bulbs exploded. I choked as a scream caught in my throat. Without thinking, I stepped back and put my arms over my head as glass rained down. Sparks sprung from the exposed wires as glass flew everywhere, spreading out all over the carpet. I looked up to see darkness all around me. Fucking no, oh my... I was cut off by a loud, painful screech that cut into my brain and made my ears ring. I covered my ears and screamed as I fell to the ground, falling to my knees, cutting the legs on the glass. The screeching grew louder until I was stopping instantly. I uncovered my ears as fear flooded my mind. Blood. Oh, fuck, blood. My ears, I said quietly with fear in my voice, speaking a little louder than I wanted to. I looked at my hands to see my palms were covered with blood. I gotta get out of here, I said as I slowly got to my feet. Fresh, warm blood ran down my legs as the glass separated with my flesh. So much blood, I gotta go. I can't take it anymore, I said as I tried to avoid looking at the blood on my hands. My blood. Exit. I need an exit, I said as I tried to stop my hands from shaking. I looked down to see the camera in the middle of the room, surrounded by shards of glass and blood-stained carpet. I slowly walked over to the camera and picked it up. It's still rolling, I whispered as I looked at the film window. My focus was ripped away from the camera as the sound of footsteps quickly approaching reached my ears. I turned around and froze as the entity ran right at me and came to a stop only a few feet away. It wailed loudly as it looked around the room. I held my breath as I tried to stay silent. The entity looked down at me, and stopped entirely. Anxiety and fear quickly rose to my mind as I realized it was staring at my hands. I looked down and choked on a scream as I realized my hands were dripping blood. The entity. I'm bleeding, and it hears the drops of my blood on the carpet. I looked up to see the entity had vanished once more. I began to exhale slowly out of relief and screamed as the entity grabbed my shoulders from behind. The creature screeched loudly as it tightened its grip, slowly crushing my bones to dust. I turned around and stumbled backwards as the entity lost its grip on my shoulder and screeched loudly. I instantly turned around and ran, kicking off the carpet as glass shards pierced the soles of my shoes. The entity screeched loudly before speeding after me. The lights flickered quicker and quicker as the entity burst the bulbs on every light it passed, darted right and began to slow as my legs grew weak from the loss of blood and constant running. The entity stopped in the hallway and looked around before hearing my footsteps and running at me again. I glanced back to see darkness all around me. It destroyed all the lights, I said to myself as I pushed off the wall and went left. The entity screamed as it picked up speed. The realization came to me that it was quickly gaining on me and I needed to do something before it was too late. I looked around before running down a corridor to my left. The entity ran past me as I held my breath and tried to make myself as still as possible. I looked around me as the lights exploded, sending the entire hallway into complete darkness. My eyes burned for a second before adjusting to the change of light as I struggled to stand still. Come on. I listened to what was happening around me as tension slowly faded. Silence. Am I safe? I thought to myself as I looked down the dark corridor in front of me. My lungs burned intensely as I took a shaky breath in. Almost instantly, the walls shook as the entity ran right past me. Fuck! I stopped myself and put my hand over my mouth to muffle any more noise. The entity's screams echoed down the hall as it pounded past me a second time. I looked down at the camera to see a class of dim glow on the wall from the filming window. I pointed the camera at the opening and waited for the entity to run past again. If I catch it on film, people will believe me when I get back, right? I thought to myself as I focused the lens on the center of the wall. A taste of metal slowly crept into my mouth and I realized I was swallowing my own blood. I whimpered in pain and fear as I waited for the entity to fully leave me alone. The lights flickered slowly once, then twice, before dimming lightly and lighting back up again and turning back on. Sparks flew everywhere as the exposed wires surged to the electricity again. I looked down at the dimly lit hallway to see the entity standing still not far from where I was. I looked around as I heard the lights power back on and wailed in pain before running right in my direction. I pulled my head out of the doorframe and looked down at the film window as the entity ran past me. The walls shook as the creature turned the corner and vanished from view. My lungs burned and I realized I was holding my breath. "Oh, fuck," I whispered as I slowly exhaled and then inhaled. The crisp, cold air burned as it entered my lungs. My eyes teared up and I dropped the camera and slowly fell to my knees. The lights buzzed as they flickered faintly, random sparks shooting out of the wires every so often. Why can't I leave? Why am I here? I want out. What did I even do? How? What even is this place? I said quietly as I let the tears fall. Blood slowly flowed from my nose as blood soaked my hair from before. I looked around to see if I was in any danger or not and then looked down at my hands. Dark red blood caked my palms and fingernails, while the blood that was still fresh slowly crept down my hands. I can't do this anymore, man. I didn't sign up for this, I said to myself sadly as I wiped my hands off of my jeans. I looked at the wall as tears raced down my face, slowly escaping as they released themselves after being held back for so long. There has to be an end to this place. I'm starving, tired, injured, and just worn the fuck out. I just want to leave. I want to go back to my reality, I whispered as they slowly laid on my side, not caring anymore about anything except going home. I yawned and stared at the camera as I struggled to stay awake. Maybe sleep will let me out, I said slowly before tiredness overtook me and I drifted off into a deep sleep. Chapter 5. Into the Backrooms. A lethal dreamscape. Where? Am I back? I said groggily as I slowly regained my vision. I looked around to see I was laying on cold, wet grass in the middle of what looked like a public park. I'm home! I cried as I quickly got to my feet. I looked around to see the public park was empty. Where is everyone? I said slowly as the feeling of fear quickly returned. I looked up to see the sky was covered with foggy gray clouds. The cuffs of my jeans grew wet and I looked down to see a thick layer of fog covering the ground. I'm home, right? I said to myself sadly, the worried sense of doubt slowly sinking in. I looked up to see I was in my neighborhood playground. A cold breeze lifted my shirt and sent chills through my body. This is home, right? I whispered as I realized this was my home, but it wasn't the same. I trembled as the wind picked up and whipped through the trees. A loud screech sounded from behind me as the wind whipped through the branches. Chills went through my entire body again as I looked around to see the eerie form of my home before kicking off the cold grass and sprinting for the houses in the distance. I focused on what looked like my house and began to run as fast as I could towards the back door. A cold breeze whipped against me as I ran against the wind. I just gotta get home. Maybe everyone's out looking for me, I said as I struggled to breathe against the strong winds pummeling against me. Fear instantly hit my brain and I slowed to a stop before looking around. Hello? I called out into the field, my voice floating on the breeze. You know what, just get home, I said to myself softly as I reminded myself of my main task. I turned around and stumbled back as a weird-looking creature looked at me around the corner before darting back against the wall. What the fuck? Was that, it looked like a literal pinhead. Its eyes, I gotta get home now. I kicked off and began to run as a feeling of dread quickly filled my thoughts. I wasn't home. This was a version of home, a deadly one. I began to run out of breath and slowed down to breathe. The wind shoved me back, and I struggled to at least get some air in my lungs. My chest burned as I realized that I wasn't going to be able to breathe until I was out of the wind. I began to run as tears welled up in my eyes from the lack of oxygen. The wind pummeled against me. Just go, I cried as I quickly closed the gap between me and safety. I looked at the door and ran faster, trying not to pass out from the lack of oxygen. I wasn't able to breathe with the wind coming at me like this. Come on, please, I cried as my vision blurred as I slowed down. And I slowed down, stumbling forwards as my body grew weaker and weaker. I slowly walked a couple of steps forwards before grabbing onto the porch railing and falling on the ground, gasping for air. What the fuck is wrong with this place? I'm home. This is home, I whispered to myself as I glanced around nervously. The wind howled as it whipped through the trees and wound through corners and crevices around the neighborhood. I took a deep breath and slowly pulled myself up, gripping the camera in my left hand and holding onto the porch railing with my right. Gotta get inside. Find a phone or something. I want to leave, I said as I slowly inched my way towards the porch stairs. The thick fog slowly crept towards me, the mist floating on air as it appeared to levitate a few centimeters off the ground. Glanced at the fog and then snapped out of it and returned my focus to getting inside. My feet shuffled along the wet grass and mud caked the bottom of my shoes as the mist soaked everything it touched. I looked down and shivered as I realized the dark area under the porch, the area I had to travel along to get to the door. Just get inside, I said to myself as I looked up at the door. Out of the corner of my eyes, I could see a skinny white figure peering out through the window. Its red and white beady eyes pointed directly in my direction. What the fuck is that thing? I mumbled as I looked away from the door, not wanting to anger whatever entity was watching me this time. The wind sped up and the rafters lining the windows slammed against the house, making the wind wail loudly. Chills ran down my spine as the air grew cold. Get in, I hissed as I began to move slightly quicker. Darkness slowly surrounded the area as clouds rolled in overhead. The thick fog was only a few feet away from me now, and the air was extremely cold. I winced as splinters of wood dug into my palms, exposing more skin and making me lose more blood. I looked up at the door and screamed as something grabbed my ankle. I took a step back out of instinct and looked under the porch to see nothing there. Before I could react, the mistake I just made, I was walked. I'm not cutting this out, guys. Before I could react to the mistake I just made, I was knocked off my feet as a large branch flew from above and thrown down forwards into the ground. The air was knocked from my lungs as my body slammed into the dirt at full force, sending waves of numbing pain through my body almost instantly. My palms dug into the dirt as my hands broke some of my fall. The wind howled as it sped up even more, blowing small amounts of rain into my area. I struggled to get up, but my legs didn't respond. I pushed off the ground using my hands and instantly regretted it as pain shot through my arms and flowed up in my wrists. Just get to the fucking side. What am I doing here? I said to myself as I shakily pulled myself back up. The porch railing seemed to grow further and further away as my vision blurred from the pain in my head. I slowly crawled forwards and rolled to the side, slamming my shoulder into the ground as I barely avoided having my head taken off by a window rafter that came off the house. The wind wailed loudly as it grew faster and faster. I pushed forward and slowly made my way into a lunge position as I pressed against the wind with all the strength I'd had. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see the pin-headed entity staring directly at me. Slowly moved a couple of steps forwards and froze as a loud crunching sound reached my ears. Out of instinct, I jumped to the left and hit the ground rolling. Came to a stop and moaned in pain as the air was knocked out of me. Looked up to see a large oak tree leaning forwards before completely breaking in half and falling to the ground with a huge crash. Dirt and wooden shrapnel went flying in all directions as I covered my face as it leapt out in the currents of the wind and launched at full speeds towards anything it went towards. Fucking hell! I cried as the pieces of bark whipped at me, slicing my arms and leaving wooden splinters on my skin. The back door seemed to get farther away by the second, and I struggled to keep my eyes on it. The wind became more and more powerful, and it began to push me back. As if the storm wanted me to stay away from my childhood home. I dug my heels into the ground as I struggled to stay upright. What the hell is happening? I cried as I struggled to breathe and see through the unbearable winds. I pushed forwards with my arms in front of my face, protecting my head from the debris as I slowly made my way forwards. The rain picked up and came down in heavy sheets, each raindrop pummeling into the ground at full speed. I clenched my teeth and reached out for the railing, hoping to physically grab it, when it mentally wasn't there. Felt the wooden beam supporting the back deck and grabbed onto it, struggling to keep my grip as the rain soaked the wood and the wind pushed me back. I pulled myself forwards and grabbed onto the top beam of the railing with both hands, hoping I had the strength to pull myself up in time. I gripped the wood tightly and began to lift myself over the rail, using all the strength I had left to make it over the gap between the porch and the ground. Come on, it's possible, I said to myself as I shakily pulled myself over the rail and planted both feet on the deck's main frame. The wooden beam slowly grew slippery as the rain soaked everything around it, making it harder to hold on to. All I could see was a blurry gray mess. Get over the rail and get inside, I said as I began to pull myself up. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see a black blur heading directly at me, and I realized I had to go back now. Without hesitating, I pulled myself over the railing and threw myself over. The black blur disappeared from view as I hit the wooden deck with a crunch. The taste of blood entered my mouth as blood began to emerge from a gash on the side of my head. I shakily got to my hands and knees, gasping for air. Get inside. Get in. Now, I said between breaths as I stared at the worn-out, peeling wooden deck making up the back deck. I slowly got to my feet and turned to face the door, the wind screaming behind me as I stumbled over the door and turned the handle. My head spun as I stumbled forwards and then backwards as I began to lose my balance. The door waved back and forth as I held onto the handle with all the strength I had left. My vision blurred and everything was fuzzy and spinning. I stumbled forwards and twisted the doorknob before falling to the floor. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see the pinheaded entity standing a few feet away outside. Get inside, I mumbled as everything went black. Chapter 5, Part 2. Where am I? I mumbled as I slowly regained consciousness. My brain felt foggy and I barely remembered what was happening. My vision slowly turned from a blurry black mess to just blurriness on what was around me. My ears were ringing and the taste of blood slowly became clear again. It's not safe, I mumbled as I shakily got to my feet and looked around. It felt as if I had just woken up from a long 12-hour nap and I was still tired afterwards. My vision waved in and out, becoming clear for a couple of seconds before fading again. I tenderly touched my lip and realized I had bashed it bad against falling upon the deck. My fingers were soaked with blood and I found I was once again starved and extremely injured. I stumbled over to what looked like a marble-topped kitchen counter and held onto it as I tried to regain my balance. Is it over? Am I finally safe? I asked myself, only to get the silence as an answer. TV static suddenly began buzzing in the background, and random toys and items were scattered all over the place. I stumbled over the window as my vision fully cleared and I stared outside. The storm had stopped. There's no evidence. No branches, no random lawn items that were left out, no water showing it rained. How is it all gone? I said quietly, completely amazed yet terrified at the same time. Looked around to see that the house was similar to my childhood home. Pots and pans hung on a rack above the stove. An assortment of wooden spoons laid in the ceramic container in the corner of the kitchen. A wooden bowl filled with an array of mixed fruit sat untouched in the middle of the kitchen island. Food, I said as a small glimmer of hope rose in my chest. I won't starve this time, I said as I hesitated in front of the counter. I didn't know if the food was trapped or poisoned. Heck, I didn't even know how old it was. But I didn't want to starve. I slowly reached for an apple and picked it up slowly, expecting it to explode or drip with blood out of some weird magic. Nothing happened. It was a perfectly normal apple. I turned it over in my hand and then took a bite, wincing in pain as pain flared in my mouth from the injuries lining my lips, gums, and teeth. Warm juice spilled from the soft red apple as I sunk my teeth into the ripened fruit. The taste of blood mixed with the apple and I chewed for a second before swallowing painfully. No, I can't. It doesn't taste right. I can't trust it, I said as I set the apple down on the counter. The color of the fruit began to change, and the bright red color slowly became a dark and sickly black. I choked back vomit and stumbled back, realizing I had just eaten whatever that thing was. It had to have been at least 100 years old. Oh, fuck. Oh, fuck. Oh, my God, that's so fucking disgusting, I said as I stumbled over to the sink and gagged. Waves of nausea crashed over me as I slumped over the sink, trying not to vomit. I stumbled back and slapped the blackened apple off the counter, hit the wall with a wet splat before exploding all over the pale wooden floors. Stepped back as the pale blackened chunks of goo spread from the core before hardening and becoming a rock-like material. No, what the fucking no, I gotta get out of here, muttered as I quickly walked out of the kitchen, leaving the black mess behind me as I entered the living room. TV had a blank screen and the constant buzz of TV static somehow filled the room. The sofa was covered in black dust. It stood on 4 wooden pegs. The dust is gray. There was a mistake. I'm going to continue reading now. Spiderwebs hung on everything and anything. The entire room smelled like mold and decaying matter. I gagged and held on my breath as I walked through the living room towards the front hallway. I jumped as the floorboards creaked loudly and I froze, listening to make sure I was actually alone. TV static abruptly stopped, making my anxiety rise as my body tensed up. I waited a couple minutes before turning around to see what was behind me. Fucking... what? I cried as I stumbled back and tripped over the worn-out wooden table in the center of the room. My breath was knocked out of me as I hit the table and rolled off onto the hard wooden floors with a loud thud. I moaned in pain as I tried to breathe, the image on my mind filled with constant replay. I coughed as dust filled my nostrils and throat, making it harder to breathe. I turned around and looked behind me to see if it was still there. I was alone again. I coughed and slowly got to my feet, brushing the dust off of my clothes. I looked around to see the house had changed. The kitchen was replaced by a library, the room having become an endless maze of bookshelves. Turned in the main hallway to see it was also gone, replaced by a basement staircase. What the hell? I muttered as I brushed as much dust off of my body as possible. I sneezed before quickly making it to my way to the library. The basement was a trap. I grabbed the fire poker that was resting along the wall of the fireplace and slowly made my way to the library of books. The house began to move, completely closing off the living room. I began to run for a safe spot between the two new rooms as the wall closed in around me. I began to run for I just read that. Dust picked up and filled the room, blinding me as it covered my view and got into my eyes. I coughed as I filled my lungs and slowed as my body grew weak from the lack of oxygen from the dust. No, not like this, man. I can't die to fucking dust, I said weakly as I stumbled forwards and let myself fall. The walls solidified behind me, completely closing off the living room and anything in it. I gasped for air as I glanced at the new wall in front of me. Dust floated in the sun's rays before settling in new places. I made it. I fucking made it, man. I cried happily as I tried to catch my breath. The fire poker rested a few feet in front of me, and I slowly got to my feet and walked towards it. Glanced behind me as I realized if I hadn't fallen forward in the moment I did, I would have been trapped for eternity and fall dead to starvation in that living room. Basement or library? I said slowly as I stepped over the doorway of the basement stairs. I looked inside only to see a couple of hundred steps descending in the darkness. Nope. Library it is, I said as I began to turn away from the basement stairs, cried out as I was shoved by an unseen entity. I dug my heels into the floor in hopes I could save myself from falling, but my efforts were futile. I reached for the doorframe in the basement door in one last attempt to save myself, but failed as my heel slipped off the top step and sent me backwards. My fingers slid on the pane smooth. I apologize, by the way, for the mistakes in writing, but it will get better through the 3 novels I have written. I will get better at reading, just so you know. If you don't like it, don't subscribe. Just comment, this guy sucks or some shit, but I'm reading the best I can, okay? I'm trying my hardest. This is only like the 5th video in the series. It'll get better. I reached through the doorframe of the basement door in my last attempt to save myself, but failed as my heel slipped off the top step and sent me backwards. My fingers slid on the smooth, painted walls of the stairwell before sliding off as I fell backwards into the darkness. End of Chapter 5. Chapter 6. The Parking Garage. Into the Backrooms. Collection 2. I hit the concrete floor with a loud thud before rolling to the side and coming to a stop. I coughed as I breathed in, trying to catch my breath only to cough more. My vision slowly cleared as my eyes adjusted to the darkness and I looked around weakly. Where am I now? I mumbled as I squinted and tried to see further into the darkness. The concrete floor was cold and covered in a thin layer of dust and dirt. I slowly got to my feet and looked around. This looks more like a parking garage than a basement, I said to myself as I walked over to one of the concrete support pillars and touched it. The faded gray stone was cold to the touch and protected by a layer of dust. I shuffled forwards, kicking up clouds of dust with my feet as I tried to get feeling back in my legs. The air was cold and smelled of dust and mildew. Dim, fluorescent lights hung on thin metal wires, the lines of light fixtures stretching on for thousands of miles. I spun a full 360-degree turn as I took in my surroundings. Yeah, this is a parking garage, I said as I spotted a rusted 1986 Honda Civic collecting dust about 50 feet away from where I was standing. I began to walk towards the car and froze as I heard the noise of wings above me. I looked up to see a gigantic moth nesting on the ceiling. I choked back a scream and stumbled back as I moved a couple of inches before I would stop and rest again. I almost tripped over my own feet before grabbing onto the concrete beam to save myself from falling. I held my breath as I looked up to see if it had disturbed itself, watching to see if I had disturbed the giant moth above me. It's gone, I said quietly as my throat went dry. My lungs burned as I held my breath while I glanced around to see if I could spot the moth again. I slowly let go of the concrete pillar and took a step back. The dim white fluorescent lights flickered above me and I stepped back again as my body began tensing up. Where is it? I said fearfully as I tried to spot the giant creature in the endless stone room I was in. Goosebumps crept along the back of my neck as my heartbeat sped up, preparing to send adrenaline through my bloodstream the second something happened. I hesitated before taking a step forward and looked around the corner. My hand slid along the concrete pillar as I peered around the corner in an attempt to spot the moth. Almost instantly, I was face to face with the giant creature, sending adrenaline and chills through my entire body. I spotted the camera behind the creature and realized I must have dropped it in the fall I took entering this place. I screamed as the creature flapped its cracked, paper-thin wings furiously, opening its mouth to release a terrifying screech. Chills shot through my entire body as I stumbled back and fell to the ground. The giant moth lunged forwards, reaching for my shoulder blades with a set of large talons that looked like they were meant to be on an eagle and not an insect. I rolled to the side as the giant moth zoomed past me, the creature picking up speed as it made a turn in seconds and came at me again. "What the hell is that?" I cried as I dove to the side, slamming into the concrete floor painfully as I rolled out of the way of the entity's razor-sharp talons. I spotted the camera in the distance and realized if I was going to make it out of here alive, I needed footage to study to learn how to escape these deadly monsters around me. I ducked as the giant moth entity lunged at me again, barely avoiding a talon to the shoulder as I began sprinting towards the camera. The moth screeched and slammed into me, sending me spinning before slamming shoulder first into a concrete pillar. I moaned in pain as I dropped like a sack of potatoes to the concrete floor. The moth came in a second time and slammed into me with full force, knocking me off of my feet and into the air. I hit the concrete floor with a sickening thud before sliding a few feet until I came to a stop. My vision faded in and out as nausea and fatigue crashed over me like a constant wave of rushing water. I slowly got to my feet and looked around to see where the creature had gone. I heard the flapping of wings above me and began sprinting for the camera again, knowing the death moth was right behind me. The wind was knocked out of my lungs as the creature slammed into my back at full force, knocking me off of my feet and onto the ground. I moaned in pain as I tried to catch my breath. The death moth screeched loudly as it came in for another attack. "Leave me alone!" I screamed as I shielded my head with my arms, crossing my forearms to make a shield in front of me. I closed my eyes as I waited for the possibly fatal blow to the head and held my breath as I froze crouched on the cold concrete, awaiting death. My arms trembled from the shaking caused by fear and anxiety as I slowly lowered them away from my face to see that the moth was gone. I slowly stood up on sore, shaky legs and looked around confused. "Where'd it go?" I said to myself quietly as I looked around the corner, expecting to see a long, razor-sharp talon coming right at my face. Nothing. I took a shaky, deep breath in as I remained tensed and ready to run the second danger came at me again. I slowly walked towards the camera and glanced around nervously before crouching down and picking it up. The film window was staticky and grainy, showing an image captured to the last second before the death moth disappeared. I squinted at one of the concrete pillars in the image and gasped as I dropped the camera to the floor and stepped back. Ow! What? How is... I choked on my words as I slowly stepped forwards and picked up the camera again. The image slowly grew clearer, and I tensed up as my mind and eyes locked onto the pin-headed entity. The chilling creature was peering around one of the concrete pillars in the distance, its eyes locked on the moth the second before it reached me. I'm still dreaming? That pin-headed entity, I'm still under... I was cut off by a loud bang sounding in the distance. My ears rang from the shockwave and I stumbled back as my head spun. "What the..." I was cut off again as a loud scream shot through the air. Adrenaline instantly shot into my blood and I began to run. My feet slapped the concrete as I attempted to sprint faster. The screams grew louder as I kept my gaze on what was in front of me, not wanting to look back. A second explosion sounded from behind me and I darted right, heading for the far side of the parking garage. An old, rusted Volkswagen laid broken down to my left. I began to run towards it, picking up as much speed as I could as the screams grew closer. I jumped into the air and rolled over the hood and landed on the ground with a sickening thud. I tried to catch my breath as the wind was knocked out of me from the fall. I took a deep breath and began to crawl into the car. Cracked, dust-covered cinder blocks held up the vehicle as dark, colored rust flakes flaked off of the metal. Dust filled my nose and I struggled not to sneeze as I squeezed myself onto the car and waited. The screams grew louder as the tall black entity ran past me, completely oblivious to the fact that I was hiding under the dusty, broken-down vehicle just 20 feet away. The lights flickered frantically as the entity ran past, the tall, lanky creature shaking the ground with its heavy footfalls as it moved quickly forwards into the darkness. I took a shaky, deep breath in slowly, trying not to cough as I inhaled more dust and powder than actual air. "It better..." My throat ran dry before I could finish, and I coughed, pain shooting through my chest as the tight space quickly became claustrophobic and small. My chest slowly closed, and I struggled to breathe. "Out! Get out!" I said as I struggled not to get stuck. Waves of panic crashed over me as I crawled out from under the car, squeezing my body under the thick metal frame as I tried to get out from the side. My head spun as I began to hyperventilate, my chest closing up as my lungs burned from the lack of oxygen. I cried out as my shoe got caught on one of the metal bars underneath the car, a thin steel rod digging into my flesh. I kicked out, trying to knock the bar loose with my other foot so I could escape. The lights began to flicker as an entity grew closer, and I shook my leg frantically, trying to get free before it was too late. No, not now, please not now," I said as I turned my body so I was facing the car. Dust cascaded down from the ceiling, and the lights flickered faster as they buzzed loudly. The cold air of the parking garage sent goosebumps up my arms and legs as the ceiling shook from the vibrations of the large black entity's footfalls. Panic flooded my thoughts, and I realized I was trapped. Without thinking, I grabbed the metal bar that was jammed deep into my shoe and cried out as it cut my palms, the cold metal burning as it sliced through my skin and tore flesh. I jerked my hand away and looked around nervously, trying to see if an entity had spotted me yet. Warm blood slowly seeped from the gash in my palms, and tears stung my eyes. "I'm stuck. I'm fucking stuck. I hate this place," I whispered to myself as I began to struggle again, kicking the bottom of the car as hard as I could in a final attempt to get free. Fear rose in my chest as my heartbeat grew louder, my heart pounding faster as seconds passed. I looked around frantically, hoping I could find something to hit the worn metal bar, only to see nothing nearby. The sounds of the entity's screams reached my ears, and I instantly knew I wasn't going to make it unless a miracle happened. "Come on!" I cried as I tore my gaze away from the darkness and returned my focus to freeing myself. I kicked the bar with my other foot, hoping I could knock myself loose at the last second. My head spun as the blood rushed to my brain, the adrenaline fading into fatigue as my body ran low on energy from the unneeded rush of stamina. Tears began slowly racing down my face as the entity's screams grew louder. I knew the creature was close, but I refused to look. My vision was blurred as tears streamed down my face, the salty droplets slowly making their way down my face and neck, only to get absorbed by the fabric of my t-shirt. Chills shot through my body as adrenaline spiked, the fear of death and having to restart quickly shrouding my thoughts and senses. Pain shot up my leg as my foot got cut open on the metal bar, my shoe finally being pulled free at the expense of ripped fabric and a gash on my ankle. Cried out in surprise as I lost my balance and fell backwards, my shin slamming onto the metal frame of the car right before my head hit the cold, hard concrete. My vision blurred instantly as the fresh blood soaked the back of my head, staining my hair and dripping onto the back of my neck. My lips opened and closed as I tried to speak but failed, my body growing weak with fatigue and brain-numbing pain. The dim white lights blurred above me, and I lifted my hand weakly to try and move myself out of the bright rays, but failed as my arm hit the concrete with a loud thwack. My body went limp as the blood soaked the cold concrete floor of the parking garage. The cracked stone ceiling faded in and out of view before everything went black. The last thing I saw was the pinheaded entity peering down at me from a large steel support beam holding up the ceiling. "Just leave me alone," I thought to myself, the pain in the back of my head slowly making my thoughts fade in and out. An image of the pinheaded entity appeared in my thoughts, the chilling creature shrouded in a blanket of midnight black darkness. "It's watching me. What does it want?" I thought to myself as the darkness slowly drained out my last remaining questions. Waves of excruciating pain crashed down on the sensory part of my brain, the burning feeling right before death slowly creeping in on me. Felt like I was floating in air, like I was in space. For a split second, I realized I wasn't part of a reality. I was between two different ones. Before I could think or say anything else, in my inner mind, they shut down. My entire mind becoming a black void as my body reached death once again in this horrible place. The rooms beyond our reality. The Backrooms. A place where nightmares are real. A place where there is no escape. There's only one way out, but the path to it is close to impossible. It was never over. It was just a brand new beginning. Into the Backrooms. Chapter 7. Hotel time loop. I regained consciousness slowly, my thoughts slowly entering first as my body slowly returned itself back to reality. I closed and opened my eyes, closing them slowly as I struggled to muster up enough energy to open my eyes properly. My head pounded, a headache quickly coming forwards as the first thing I felt upon waking. I opened my eyes again and squinted at my surroundings. All I could see was a blurry white and black patterned carpet. I lifted my arms and rubbed my eyes, slowly removing the bacteria that had built up while I was unconscious from my view. I blinked a couple of times in an exaggerated manner before looking around. "A hotel?" I said groggily as I slowly got to my feet. My knees were sore and the bloody gash from earlier had dried and scabbed over. I looked down at my hands to see they were stained with dry blood, the dark red liquid settling deep into the cracks of my palms before drying. I returned my gaze to the new hallway in front of me, the long corridor stretching on for a couple of 100 feet before coming to an end with an old wooden door. Why the hell are there no other doors? I asked myself as I began to slowly make my way to the door at the end of the hallway. My head throbbed, a migraine slowly beating away at my mind within my skull. As the wooden door at the end of the hallway grew closer, so did the feeling that something was wrong. I glanced around nervously as I reached for the handle. Locked. I took my hand away from the doorknob and looked behind me. "I need a key," I said softly, the pain in my head causing my words and sentences to be quiet and short. I began making my way back to where I started and began admiring the room. Old-style Victorian paintings of people posing similar to the Mona Lisa hung on the walls, some normal, others distorted and nightmarishly terrifying. The 6 tall, 2 wide windows were covered in an undulating white fog, blocking almost all light going in or out of them. Rickety wooden tables and chairs lay strewn amongst the room, mostly leaning against walls. The wallpaper had a hotel-style red pattern on it, and it was peeling in multiple places. The stench of mildew and rotting wood slowly began reaching my senses as the pain in my head slowly diminished. I looked over at one of the polished wooden tables lined up against the wall and walked over to it. "It's so clean," I said as I slid my finger over the slick, polished surface. "How is it so clean? With everything I've been through, none of the levels were this pristine," I said as I looked through the fogged-up glass window. The grassy hills far off in the distance were distorted and blurry through the window frame, as if there wasn't meant to be anything else here. "Key. Key, I need a key," I said as I looked around, slapping my forehead, my eyes darting from table to table as I searched for a ring of keys or maybe even a lockpick. "This level is insanely cool, to be honest," I said as I made my way over to the middle of the hallway. A massive pile of wardrobe cabinets and bookshelves with nothing in them lay stacked against the wall, positioned in a way similar to that in a horror movie, with the victim trying to blockade the door with everything they had. The sounds of distant chattering slowly drifted through the halls, reaching my ears as the sounds brushed past. "People! Those are people talking," I said as a glimmer of hope began to rise through the cloud of doubt and fear. "I need a key. If there's people behind that door, I have to get to the people. They can know my way out of here, I cried as I quickly pushed off the black and white tile floor and tugged on the wardrobe door. The door creaked as the handle strained against the aged wood. The wardrobe remained closed. "Shit, I thought that would open," I said as I looked around, the hopes of finally finding people beginning to stay with me for the first time in a while. "Key, I really need that key," I said as I ran down the cluttered hallway to the door. I grabbed the knob and yanked, hoping I could knock it open somehow and get to the people before they left. Hey, I'm stuck in here. Can you hear me?" I cried, frantically pounding my fist against the door. I had instantly abandoned any rational plan to find a key and pounded on the wooden door as hard as I could. My fist grew red as I beat the door as hard and fast as possible. "Hello, can you hear me?" I screamed, slowly growing tired as the door remained intact. "Can you hear—" I was cut off by a loud buzz, the sound instantly filling every inch of the room. I dropped to my knees, holding my hands over my ears as I waited for the loud, deafening buzzing to stop. I clenched my teeth, the force causing my gums to flare with pain. "What the fuck is that?" I growled as I gritted my teeth in agony. The sound grew louder as the walls began to shake. A metallic taste of blood filled my mouth as my jaw cracked under the pressure. "Stop!" I screamed as I closed my eyes. fresh blood seeping through my pursed lips as it dripped on my chin. The sound grew deafeningly loud, and then silence. The lights flickered once, twice, and then became normal again. I opened my eyes and swallowed, slowly taking my hands away from my ears. I want to leave. I just want to leave, I said as tears of pain and loneliness began to roll down my cheeks. I sniffed, making myself choke on my own blood as it went up the nasal pipe from my mouth. With shaky legs, I got to my feet and looked around. Please, man. Just, let me leave. I don't want to be here anymore, I said softly as my eyes stung, tears streaming down my face as blood seeped from my nose, mouth, and ears. I was exhausted already. I took a step forward and listened, trying to hear the people talking again. Nothing. They're gone. They're fucking gone, I said as feelings of anger and sadness rose up. What the fuck is wrong with this place? I cried as I punched the door as hard as I could. My knuckles crunched, blood instantly seeping through my broken skin as my fist made contact with the door. Ow! Fuck! I muttered as I kicked the door in a rage. The door crunched before flying open, the lock flying off into the main hall, landing with a skidding crash before coming to a halt in front of the door. A-E, I read. It didn't really make sense. It was pronounced weird and had weird metallic symbols in it. I stared at the splintered wood as my foot and fist throbbed in extreme pain. Well, it's open, I muttered as I walked through the doorframe and went into what looked like the main hall. Cluttered piles of storage shelving and hotel furniture lay scattered all over the corridor. The smell of dust somehow becoming vacant as I walked down the hallway. A cold current of air rushed past, sending chills through my entire body. I glanced behind me and then turned back to the corridor in front of me. Hello? I said, my voice echoing down the elaborate tunnel-like hallways as it traveled on invisible currents of air. Nothing. Why do I even try? Why do I even try, man? I cried as I shoved one of the large wooden shelves over. It hit the floor with a deafening crunch. Crash. Knocking more things off of shelves as the impact shook the hallway. Dust kicked up, floating into the air as it was knocked away from its last location. I quickly walked over to one of the dresser drawers and opened the top compartment. Water? I muttered as I cautiously grabbed the small white canister. The liquid inside sloshed as I turned it over in my hand. A faded label on the front read the words almond water in extremely faded and messy black text. Almond water? I read. There is food here, I said as I twisted the cap off of the bottle. The white liquid moved inside as I brought the bottle to my lips. The dry dust that covered the lip of the bottle made me take the water away from my lips instantly. Fuck, you know what, just drink it. I brought the bottle back to my lips and took a swig. The cool liquid slid down my throat, seeming to instantly make me feel more at peace. I pointed the bottle in the air and chugged the rest of the contents in a single gulp. Wow, I said as I placed the now empty bottle on top of the dresser. I looked around to make sure I wasn't being watched before returning my focus to the drawers. I opened the second drawer to reveal a clump of cloth and a flashlight battery. Wait, light. Yeah, light. Wait, there is light. This is a flashlight battery, I said. Wait. Fuck. Where's the camera? I said as I glanced around, searching for the camera in my current surroundings. When did I lose it? I muttered as I grabbed the flashlight batteries and put them in my pocket. I instantly forgot about the camera as I opened the third drawer, revealing an entire flashlight and a canister of bug spray. What the? Bug spray? I cried as I grabbed the can of bug spray and turned it over. Do not spray when not needed. Do not let spray come in contact with skin or eyes. Only use in emergencies. Single use only. I blinked, letting the label sink in before putting the spray can back in my pocket. I might need that, but what? The image of a death moth came into my mind, reminding me of what lurks in the darkest corners of the ceilings. Oh yeah. Shit, I muttered as I grabbed the flashlight. I popped the latch and popped the battery inside. Please work, I mumbled as I closed the battery cover. The lights clicked as I turned it on. A dim beam of white light shot across the room and cast a warm glow on the nearest wall. Yes! Yes! I cried as I slammed the dresser door shut. Turned around and screamed as the sight of a giant insect lay directly in front of me. The death moth had lunged at my face before I could react. Getting spooked by my scream as I by my scream of terror as it fluttered frantically through the air. I ducked, stumbling back before hitting my head on the dresser behind me. The death moth buzzed loudly before swooping upwards, getting ready to go in for an attack again. Crawled backwards on my hands and knees, bumping against corners and walls before rolling to the side. The death moth swooped down, small pinchers cutting the top of my shoulder, tearing the sleeve of my shirt to shreds. Scrambled forwards, almost knocking myself out on a nearby shelf. The death moth screeched as it tore off a tuft of my hair. It winced as I reached for the canister of bug spray in my back pocket. The death moth clicked loudly, preparing to finish me off as it picked up speed and lunged at my neck. I yanked the bug spray from my back pocket and pressed down on the spray lever. The can hissed as the spray shot out in a mist. The death moth screeched loudly, making sounds of pain as it hurtled at me. I ducked, the large insect flying past my head before hitting the wall with a sickening crunch. Turned around, dropping the can as I stared at the giant bug in fear, waiting for it to wake up again. I touched my shoulder gently, fresh blood instantly soaking my fingertips. Shit. I do need the spray, I said as I slowly got to my feet. Glanced at the can, noticing the one-time use label again. Fuck. I muttered as I kicked the can across the room. A cold chill swept past me, chilling me to the core. It's so clean. Get rid of these giant death moth things and you've got a pristine and tidy hotel. Hello? A voice called from a nearby wardrobe. Wait, I mumbled, both excitement and fear rising in my chest. Hello, can you hear me? I cried as I ran over to the wardrobe's closed doors. I grabbed the handle and yanked it open, setting trapped dust and cobwebs all over me. I coughed, opened my eyes again, and screamed. Chapter 8. Into the Backrooms. Hounded. I fell back, stumbling away from the closet doors as a dog-like creature with a human head fell onto me. I kicked out, my foot connecting with his head as I scrambled back to my feet. I kicked off the ground and ran as fast as I could down the hallway. The weird creature howled before starting the chase after me. I darted to a door on my left and rammed into it with brute force. The latch clicked as the wood cracked on impact. I fell sideways before hitting the ground with a crunch. I rolled, kicking frantically as I tried to keep as much distance as I could from the creature. The sound of 2 sets of feet reached my ears as I leapt into the standing position. No! I screamed as I ran to the door, grabbing it with both hands as I slammed it shut. The hound barked as it interfered with the door halfway, shoving me back. I dug my toes into the carpet as I put all my weight against the door. The dog-like creature snarled, its feet scraping the door as it tried to get in. I grabbed my flashlight, struggling to keep the door closed as possible. The flashlight hit the human-like face with a sickening crunch, sending the hound back as I howled in pain. I slammed into the door, shutting it instantly as I let the flashlight drop to the floor. My head pounded as I sunk to the ground, the sound of the creature outside the door tearing away at my sanity. What the fuck do I do? What do I fucking do? I said as I grabbed the flashlight and got to my feet. The door shifted as the hound rammed into it, the creature attempting to breach the wooden locked door with brute force. I walked across the hotel room, scanning the surfaces of drawers as I went. The bed creaked as I walked across the moist carpet. I need to get out of here, I said as I pulled open the top drawer of the bedside dresser. A set of flashlight batteries rolled to the other end of the drawer. Behind, pulled along by the momentum of the... A set of flashlight batteries rolled to the other end of the drawer. Behind, pulled along by the momentum of the drawer open. What did I write here? You know, I'll fix that. I'm not fixing it in editing, but, guys, fuck. I grabbed the batteries before pocketing them, opening the next 2 drawers with my other hand. A bottle of almond water sat atop the bedside table, waiting for someone to take it in with them. I grabbed the almond water and walked back to the closet. The door shook as the hound leapt at it furiously, struggling to crack the door for him to get inside. I exhaled, tossing a stained white towel to the floor as I grabbed another canister of bug spray. My head pounded as I crouched down, scanning the lower shelves of the closet. The doorknob shook, the lock slowly shifting as the hound beat away at the aged wooden door. I grabbed a small box of bandages, the container looking similar to a first aid kit you find in video games, and pocketed it. I quickly walked over to the bed and crouched down, looking everywhere I could. Escape. How do I... A metal vent caught my eye, the shiny steel grate seeming to hide behind a corner wall. I sprinted over and yanked the metal grate off of the wall, sending multiple screws to the floor. The air ducts? I can go through the air ducts, right? I said as I dropped the metal vent cover. I looked behind me to see the door bending under the hound's weight as it rammed against the door repeatedly. I took a deep breath in and crawled into the air duct, slowly inching my way down. The tight and closed space as the door to the hotel room burst open. The hound screamed in a rage as it realized the prey was now gone. Fuck. I mumbled fearfully as I shuffled through the metal ducts. Inching further in the darkness, the spiderwebs brushed against my face and shoulders. I glanced to the right to see another air duct exiting into a new hallway and began to inch my way towards it. Sounds of fast-moving air began to approach behind me as I wiggled my way down the tight space. Hot air nipped my heels as I shoved the vent cover off with 2 hands. The metal grate skidded across the hotel carpet as I crawled out into the hallway. The vent hissed loudly as a stream of burning hot air blasted through the open air duct. I stumbled back as the burning hot steam hit my skin. Lost my footing and fell backwards. The rush of burning steam slowed before coming to a stop. Took a couple of deep breaths and got to my feet. That was way too close, I said as I turned around. Almost instantly the hound was on top of me, its head jerking left and right as it growled and howled. That does not say as. That should be fixed. Fixed. I cried out and punched the creature's repulsive face, my fist connecting with the side of its head. It yelped in pain as I grabbed my flashlight and whipped it over the creature's eyes. It rolled to the right, yelping in pain as it stopped against the side wall. Get the fuck off of me, I said as I turned the flashlight on and shined it directly on in the hound's corneas. The creature howled in pain as the light appeared to burn its flesh. I inched closer, increasing the flashlight's brightness as the hound backed itself into a corner. I took a step forwards before pushing the light's brightness to max. The hound wailed in pain before bolting down the hallway and into the dark room at the last corridor. I clicked the off button and ran the opposite direction, ramming into the stairwell door before stopping at the corner between the 2 staircases. Light! That's the answer. I need light for these guys, I said to myself as I hurriedly made my way down to the first floor. Sounds of wings reached my ears as I reached the stairwell's exit door, grabbed the can of bug spray from my back pocket and pushed the door open. The room in front of me was pitch black. The possibility of hidden entities began to lurk in the dark corners of my mind. I gripped the can of bug spray tightly as I stepped into the darkness. The second I stepped into the completely black void, everything went bright white as a loud mechanical hum filled my ears. Adrenaline shot through my entire body as the sounds and lights grew more and more intense. What the hell was happening? I cried as I turned around, planning to go back the way I came. The last thing I saw was the pitch-black void all around me before everything went dark. Editor's note here. I do all of this in one take. If you don't like it, leave. But I'm reading this not only to check it, but to also have fun and enjoy reading it, just to see what I've done and also provide the history of what this story is. Now, if you want to stick around, this is part 8. So if you're enjoying, please consider subscribing. I know this is probably about 2.5 hours into the full novel series, because the first part was about 45 minutes, and this second collection ends with Chapter 9, Pipe Dreams, and I'm really, really happy to show you guys what lies in Book 2, because Book 2 is where it gets good. Now, I'll see you guys in the future, and I'll continue posting videos until all 93 parts are released. See you in the next one. By the way, you're just going to continue watching these, so I'm not doing an outro. Into the Backrooms. Chapter 9, Pipe Dreams. Whew. The sounds of gears reached my ears as my eyes adjusted to the darkness. I reached for my flashlight and looked around. The dim outlines of metal pipes and drainage lines lined the walls, stretching on into the darkness. I clicked the power switch and flicked my flashlight back and forth. Wow, someone who works on the pipes and drainage lines would call this Pipe Dreams, I muttered to myself, cringing as I slid the bug spray back into my pocket. Shined the flashlight on the wall as I slowly walked forward, scanning the walls and floors for clues and materials like almond water or batteries. Now that I knew they existed, I would always be searching for them. The smell of dust, mold, and sewage water filled my nose as I went further away from my starting point. This place seems really tight. I'm screwed if I run into an entity, aren't I said as I walked down the narrow corridor. The flashlight flickered as I shined it into the darkness. Came to a stop as a white rectangle caught my eye. Only one right way, I read as I pulled a paper from the wall. The pipe to my left hissed as it shot a dense cloud of steam hot steam into the wall opposite the exit valve. I jumped and stumbled away as the burning hot steam dissipated outwards. I looked around nervously before walking forwards again. The sounds of my footsteps echoed down the corridor, mixing with the sounds of bursting exhaust valves and creaking pipelines. I began to walk faster, the sounds of my footfalls growing louder as I began to run. "Why are the lights off? Nothing good ever happens when the lights are off," I muttered as my flashlight flickered more sporadically. I slowed down as I reached a metal box protruding from the corner concrete wall. "A generator! Yes, oh my god, it's a generator!" I cried as I grabbed the handle and opened the electrical box. Sparks flew as the metal hinges groaned loudly. I shined my flashlight on the power switches and scanned the electrical panel for a light switch. Left corridor, right corridor, level exit, main hall, full hall, full hall. That has to be it, I said as I flicked the switch. The lights hummed as the light panels lining the ceiling's hallway powered on one by one. Yes! But what about all these other rooms? I mumbled as I stared at the multitude of other switches. The sound of steam pipes bursting echoed down the hallway, the sounds bouncing down the seemingly infinite corridor until they reached my ears. I reached for the level exit switch, planning to see what it would do, before one of the pipes directly next to me burst, sending a cloud of burning hot steam outwards in my direction. I yelped as the hot steam singed my skin, burning my flesh as it dissipated into nothing. I slammed the generator box shut and sprinted down the hallway where I had originally came. "This is creeping me out. How far do these halls go?" I said as my shoes slapped the concrete floors. The pipes next to me groaned as the lights flickered. "Just go back. Find the exit. There are only two tunnels, I said to myself, the random thoughts bouncing around in my mind, coming out as nervous sentences. I passed the places I started in and continued running until I hit a new section. "This hallway is darker. Why is it getting so cold?" I said nervously as I slowed my speed and cautiously made my way further down the corridor. The sounds of whispering echoed down the hallway, causing me to slow to a stop. "Something's wrong. No, something's wrong," I said as I took one last step forward. I screamed as the nearby steam valve burst, sending hot steam outwards only inches from my face. Sounds of laughter grew louder as I turned around and sprinted as fast as I could away. "I'm not alone anymore. What is that thing? What the fuck is that thing?" I cried as I turned to see a smiling face in the darkness. The white eyes gleamed as the bodiless figure grew closer. "Why is it laughing?" I cried as the lights began to flicker furiously, causing an experience that would force death onto someone with epilepsy. The laughter grew deafeningly loud as the white smiling face grew close enough to spit on. Chills ran through my entire body as the faint glow of rainbow lights in the corner closet-sized room grew closer. A cloud of burning steam brushed the back of my neck as the laughter grew eerily louder. I darted into the rainbow light and jumped onto the ladder, not caring about what lay beyond the hatch I was entering. "Oh my fucking god," I said as my head spun. The rainbow lights faded in and out of view as everything faded away. The sound of laughter grew softer as the smiling entity grew further away from me. I panted, my lungs burning as I took one last breath before everything went white. Into the Backrooms. Chapter 10. The Original Level Fun. A Carnival Birthday. The sounds of party music filled my ears as my eyes adjusted to the bright colors everywhere around me. "This place is so cheery," I mumbled as I stared at the orange-colored walls, an occasional white table with party hats and red solo cups lying along random walls. I cautiously walked over to the white table nearest to me and poked the red solo cup, seeing if it served any purpose here. It fell over with a subtle tap before rolling off the table and onto the floor. "What's with the music?" I said to myself as the cheery sound of party music and the distant echoes of children's songs in the far distance played. I looked down at the arcade patterns below my feet, the dark blue carpet littered with orange, yellow, and green squiggles strewn about the floor, stretching out to the white trim lining the orange walls. I turned around and scanned the table for materials, only to find plastic cups and party hats strewn about. "What is all this?" I mumbled as I walked over to the far wall. The sounds of cheery music grew louder as I turned the corner and entered another room. The orange walls stretched around, creating a multitude of party rooms and narrow hallways. I glanced at the party table to see a red balloon floating upwards, the thin white string holding it to the foldable chair. I looked around before turning the corner again. The party music instantly cut short, filling the room with silence. I instinctively stopped my breathing as the sounds of shuffling grew louder. A loud, shallow scream reached my ears as the sounds of shuffling grew deafening. I looked around before making eye contact with a faint, beige-colored figure rushing towards me. I yelped and stumbled back as it moved towards me at a rapid pace. It held a red balloon in its hand, and its chilling, lifeless black eyes and cheery smile was the last thing I saw before everything went black. I was dead. My vision slowly cleared as the bright orange walls filled my view for a second time. "Did I die?" I said, shocked at what had just happened. I was still processing the chilling partygoer that had ripped me to pieces before I could even react. Glanced around, looking for any threats before quickly walking over to a new crumpled piece of paper. I took it off the wall and looked at the image on the wrinkled page. "These tables seem useful. Maybe I should hide under them if something chases me." I read aloud, gripping the page in my hand as I stared at the black scribbles making the shape of a person running for a table with one of those party entities right behind them. I shoved the paper in my pocket and quickly walked over to the table. "Do you actually have to hide under these?" I muttered as I counted the 3 chairs surrounding the table. Sure enough, there was an open space with a big gap big enough for me to get under if I crouched quick enough. "No way. I'm not doing that," I said as I turned back to the hallway exiting the room I started in. I quickly walked over and peered around the corner. The partygoer had its back turned, facing the table that I would have to hide under if I had read the paper beforehand. "Okay then," I said to myself as I crouched, slowly sneaking around the partygoer. The red balloon floated on invisible waves as the cheery music played throughout the level. "It's facing the table. What the hell am I supposed to do?" I said as I stared at my only way to survive the entity that just killed me minutes ago. The music stopped, instantly alerting the partygoer of my location. "What?" I cried as I quickly stood up and ran for the table. The partygoer screamed behind me before hitting me from the back. Once again, everything went dark. "What the fuck?" I said as my view of the orange room cleared for a third time. "How the fuck do I survive this? It's rigged," I said as I hurriedly walked back to the hallway. I crouched, praying that the music didn't stop as I analyzed the possible tables I could hide under. The cheery music played constantly as I slowly made my way around the first partygoer. I continued to crouch as I crept my way down the next hallway, instantly spotting another table. "There's more. There's fucking more," I said as the 2 more partygoers facing different walls entered my view. I quickly crouch-waddled over to the table and hid under it as the music stopped seconds after I got under the table. "Yes!" I mumbled as the 2 partygoers looked around before returning to normal again. The music started up again as I made my way out from under the table and around the 2 partygoers. Almost instantly, I was face to face with another partygoer, its lifeless black eyes and mocking, cheery smile filling my view as it ripped my limbs apart before everything faded to black. "It's rigged! It's so fucking rigged! It's so rigged!" I cried as I found myself back in the cheery orange room. I grabbed the piece of paper from my pocket and tore it to shreds. "Just let me out of here, man. Just let me the fuck out of here. I miss my friends and my family. I want to see people again, not these things. I want to go home," I said as I trailed off, letting the shred of paper fall from my hands and spread throughout the room. A single tear rolled down my cheek as I looked over at the iconic white party table. "I don't want to be here anymore," I said sadly as I walked over to the plastic party chair and sat down. I stared at the red Solo cup on the floor in front of me and sniffed, bringing the slow and watery stream of snot back up into my nose. I rested my hand on the table and stood at the door in silence. Why am I even here? Why does something like this exist? It has no purpose anywhere. It ruins lives. It just ruins my life. It took everything from me. My family, my friends, my home. Why can't I just go home? I mumbled as I tapped the paper party hat on the table. It shifted before falling over, rolling for a couple of seconds before coming to a stop. The thin white strap that held the hat on the person's head twisted up before unraveling almost instantly. I smiled softly at the thought of everything I had back home, everything I took for granted. As fast as the smile started, it was gone. I got to my feet, shoving the plastic party chair into the table before walking to the hallway entering the party rooms. I just want to leave. I want my life back. I have to escape this place. It isn't infinite. It can't be. Whatever this place is, it's got an exit. Anything that has an entrance has a way out. I just need to be the one who escapes, the one who finds the exit to my reality. If I give up now, I give up on going home, I said to myself as I stared at the orange-colored walls. Let the words I had just said sit in silence, the only other sounds being the occasional start and stop of the cheery music. I will leave this place. I will go home. I'll never know if I can leave if I don't try. This place forces everything to adapt. I have to adapt. It feeds on people like me. I can't let it win. I can and will go home, I said, my voice growing slightly louder as a new boost of confidence rose. I clenched my fist until my knuckles went white. I knew I could leave. I wanted to leave. I had to find out how. You can do this, I said to myself as I took a step closer to the deadly rooms ahead. I took a deep breath. Crouch, keep calm, listen to your surroundings, be aware, know what lies ahead, I said as I began to enter a crouched position, readying myself to enter the many nightmares that lie in front of me. Just go for it, I said as I crouched and walked as fast as I could into the first room. Cheery party music played loudly, fun and playful tune clashing with the horrors of the level. I stared at the first partygoer, its bright red balloon bobbing on invisible waves as I listened for the music and then made my move. The partygoer remained with its back to the table ahead, its lifeless black eyes and cheery smile staring at the blank wall in front of it. I cut the partygoer in the corner of my view as I made my way to the table. The orange walls seemed to merge as I focused all my senses on the surrounding environment. Only a few feet lay between me and the table when the music stopped, instantly alerting the partygoers of my location. I uncrouched and speedily made my way to the table. The partygoer behind me missed me by sheer seconds as I got beneath the table in the nick of time. The cheery music began playing again as I took a couple of deep breaths. The partygoer went back into its statue-like state, now completely oblivious of my existence. I smiled, the anxiety shooting adrenaline through my bloodstream becoming a lesser problem. Just make it through the rest, I whispered to myself as I slowly made my way out from under the table. Remaining crouched, I made my way to the next hallway. The music varied in volume as it went soft and loud, and then soft, and vice versa. I glanced at the partygoer behind me and made my way to the next hallway. The music rose in volume before coming to a stop. No, not now, I said fearfully as I dismissed the crouching approach and sprinted for the next table. 2 partygoers joined the partygoer behind me as I beelined it for the table. I rolled, my body narrowly avoiding the death-inflicting touch as I cupped the side of a chair. I inhaled sharply and then held my breath as the partygoers gave off a loud, chilling sound, loaded with hatred and hunger to kill. My right shoulder throbbed as I held my breath, death standing right in front of me, only a couple of feet away. How do I get rid of them? I hissed to myself as I listened for the music, waiting for it to start back up again. The partygoers went back to their normal positions once more as I walked out from under the table. The music grew louder and began to hurt my ears, causing me to wince. Why is the music getting louder? I thought to myself as I quickly made my way around each partygoer, careful not to let them spot me. The music began to grow deafening, tearing in my ears. I put my hands to my ears and to try and muffle it a bit, but the feeling of warm, fresh blood hit my palms the second I did. Fuck, I said to myself as I darted around a corner into another hallway. The music grew extremely loud, causing me to growl in pain. What the fuck? Fucking stop it! I screamed. The music instantly stopped, alerting all partygoers of my location. Immediately broke into a full sprint down a long, winding corridor lined with orange wallpaper with kids show characters occasionally being printed on the wall every few feet. What the fuck? Why does the level keep changing? I cried as the sounds of the partygoers grinding against the floor grew louder. I gasped as a button on a large steel pedestal appeared at the end of the hallway. It's a dead end. The button is all I have, I cried as the cold chill of a partygoer grazed my neck. I stumbled, tripping on my own feet as I reached as far as I could, hoping to fall on the button. With a deafening bang, I hit the button, slamming into the steel pedestal with a sickening crunch. The entire hallway went bright white. I moaned in pain as I slid to the ground, blood pouring from a gash in my head. Fucking did it. I fucking did it, I whispered as everything went white. Into the Backrooms, Book 1, Chapter 11, Playland. I awoke to the sounds of cheery party music. My face felt broken and sore as I slowly broke away from the scratchy 1960s arcade-style carpet. What? I thought I escaped, I mumbled as my vision slowly cleared. I gasped as my view opened to a massive, colorful playground. The giant, colorful tubes and mesh fabric windows littered the entire house-sized structure. A playground? It's so big, I said to myself, staring at the massive playset in awe. Isn't this level fun? I said to myself as a faint memory of this level reached the back of my mind. I saw this on a computer back on my head. Where did I see this? I said to myself, slowly forgetting what my home was, where I came from. I continued to stare at the massive playgrounds as I got to my feet, looking at the multitude of slides and chutes that filled the massive playset. Sorry? Where are all the partygoers? I said, slightly taken aback by the fact that I knew the name of one of the entities. What's going on? How did I know this stuff? I said as I looked around. The cheery music played from small box speakers that littered the corners of the ceilings and floors. White folding chairs and tables strewn about the large party chamber I was in, the surfaces littered with plastic cups, crumpled napkins, and party hats. What is this place? Why does it feel different? I muttered as I looked around again. Closed, colorful doors with a slightly covered lock spread out across the wall, leading into different party rooms shielded by glossy and clean glass windows. How are the windows so clean anyways? I muttered as I began to walk up to one of the windows. Leave. A barely audible voice called from all around me. I froze, not wanting to look at what was speaking to me with such a chilling aura. I want to, I choked, finally gathering the courage to look behind me. Nothing. There was nothing there. I was still alone. What? I said, fear filling my voice. My heartbeat sped up, the sound of each thump filling my ears. Who's there? I called, my voice slightly echoing through the playground before disappearing into the brightly lit chamber I had completely. Leave. The voice called again, slightly louder this time. I backed against the door, glancing around frantically to see what was calling out to me. Where are you? I cried, fears slowly crushing my soul down like an old printing press. I want to leave, please, where are you? I screamed, my voice bouncing off of the walls before vanishing completely. The echo had changed. Get out! Sorry, I can't scream, it's like 11 o'clock at night, but I had to continue. Get out! The voice screamed. The room appeared to shake as I stumbled back, falling through the unlocked door behind me. My heart pounded in my chest frantically as I scrambled back on all fours. I'm trying, I swear I'm trying, please, I cried, tears quickly falling from my eyes onto the scratchy blue carpet, the colorful squiggly pattern laid unchanged by my salty tears of pure sadness and fear, actually seeming to grow brighter as if it was feeding on my sorrows. I backed all the way against the wall, staring at the playground through the large glass viewing window as I cried to myself, soaking my blood-stained clothes in tears as I pressed myself back against the concrete wall behind me. I just want to leave, please, I whispered solemnly as I stared off into the distance. The gash in my forehead from earlier had begun to scab over, slowing the steady flow of blood that had been soaking my clothes. I want to be let out. I want to leave. Trust me, I whispered to myself as my tears soaked the collar of my shirt. I gently touched the gash on my head and winced, slight pain firing through my skull as I interrupted a small part of the healing process. I looked around, still trying to see who had been talking to me, only to find nothing. I have to get out of here. I can't stay here any longer, I said as I rose to my feet. I walked over to the wall, tempted to crush my skull and just end it. No, that's not how this works, I said as I walked out of the room, holding my hands up in defense, not wanting to kill myself just yet. I have to try first, I mumbled as I exited the party room, closing the door behind me. I looked around me before my eyes slowly stopped on the playground. There could be something there, I said to myself. I took a step forward, allowing my eyes to explore the area before entering. A large kiddie pool full of plastic balls laid in one corner, multiple colored slides exiting into it. I glanced up at the maze of tunnels and chutes and spidered a ladder to the ceiling. I knew it! I hissed as I began to run, beelining it for the ladder. The cheery party music began to drive into the front of my mind, causing me to slow down. I actually want to have some fun first, I said confidently as I turned around, facing away from the ladder before running for the ball pit. I watched as the ball pit grew closer, my feet pounding against the soft yet firm carpet as I booked it for the balls. I wanna jump in, I said as I began to lose control of my mind. I laughed, my sanity breaking down. I want to jump in the ball pit, I screamed as I ran faster, my lungs burning as I ignored my body's signs of distress. The music grew louder as I closed the gap. 15 feet. 12 feet. 9 feet. I love fun! I cackled as I jumped into the air. 3 feet. 2 feet. In. I landed in the ball pit with a loud, plastic-sounding thwack, my legs not hitting the bottom as my head instantly went under. Almost immediately, panic set in. Fuck! I gasped as I sunk deeper. The balls closed in over me as the ball pit began to swallow me whole. I can't breathe, I groaned as I sunk deeper, my throat closing as my lungs became crushed. My chest heaved before closing in, the weight of the plastic balls not allowing me to breathe anymore. I inhaled, bringing the plastic balls over the holes I could breathe through, causing them to suffocate me more. Please, I whispered as my vision faded in and out. I grew lightheaded as my vision filled with colors such as white, blue, yellow, and green. My voice was cut off as the plastic balls choked me slowly, closing around my throat, preventing movement in my head. No. I wheezed as everything faded in and out, my vision slowly becoming completely blurred as my head grew more and more heavy. I groaned as I sunk further, now my mind only being able to function. The smell of plastic filled my nose as I never touched the bottom. My body left to sink in the ball pit forever. I exhaled one last time before everything went black. Segment 2. I woke up to the sounds of cheery party music and a view of the house-side playground in front of me. What happened? I mumbled as I looked around confusedly. My head hurt, a migraine pounding away in my skull as my vision pained me. My arms and legs felt sore, and my thighs kept cramping. How? I muttered as my eyes suddenly fell on the ball pit. The endless pit of plastic balls sat mockingly in front of the playground, seeming to laugh at the fact that it was able to take my life without even trying. The ball pit, I wasn't in control. How? I said as millions of thoughts raced through my head. My eyes darted away from the ball pit and over to the massive slides. The tall yellow and red beams seemed to reach for the sky, being wrapped with a squishy foam exterior to prevent kids from danger when playing under the maze's structures. What was happening before I... My eyes fell on the ladder, an open trapdoor laying on the ceiling. The ladder seemed to be the way up to it. I took a deep breath and scanned the area around the escape hatch. A set of thin metal beams leading to a platform below the ladder seemed to be the only way over it. The maze of mesh windows filled the entire walls below the ceiling part of the playground, appearing to fill tens of hundreds of feet of fabric mesh and boxy chambers. The trapdoor has to be a way out, I said to myself as I continued to look around. My eyes fell on a small train ride in the far right corner of the massive playground chamber, the track winding multiple corners, going up and down before stopping at a little train station near the center of everything. There was no train, and only the twisty winding track showed the train existed here. I turned about 90 degrees to see a wall of shelves, some holding random items inside. Resources? I said, confidence and hope rising in my chest as I quickly walked over to them. The rows of small plastic cubes went along the wall for about 20 feet, going up about 50 before stopping near the ceiling. Almond water, I muttered as I picked up a small canister that resembled a water bottle. A faded white strip wrapped around the glass bottle with the words almond water scratched into the paper with black pen. I twisted the cap, hesitant to actually drink it before bringing it to my lips. Leave. A distant voice called, sending chills through my entire body. I shivered, gripping the bottle of almond water tightly before chugging it. The cold, refreshing liquid poured down my throat, filling my stomach and making my throat less dry. I melted in a relief as the mysterious liquid calmed my nerves. Oh my God, I said as I finished off the rest of the liquid in the bottle. I looked around, listening for the voices as I scanned the rest of the cubicles while I did so. The voices in my head. After I drank this almond water, they stopped. I mumbled to myself as I placed the empty bottle of almond water back in the cubicle I had found it in. This stuff does something for my sanity or something like that. I don't know. I said as I took a few steps to the right, scanning the shelves for more resources. My eyes landed on a set of 2 batteries, my mind instantly jumping to the conclusion that there was were electronic devices in this place, sorry. There has to be a flashlight or something somewhere, I said to myself as I put the 2 batteries into my jeans' left pocket, grabbed another bottle of almond water and set it on the ground, slowly starting a pile of resources I could use or would need. I continued scanning the shelves at eye level until I spotted something insanely useful. Holy shit, is this a backpack? I cried as I grabbed the worn-out brown-colored sack out of the cubicle it was in. I lifted the top flap and looked inside to see a flashlight with no batteries, a bottle of almond water, and some stale-looking bread. I gasped as I looked into the I gasped as I reached into the backpack and grabbed the flashlight. I knew it! I cried as I grabbed the batteries out of my pocket. I popped the battery cover off the flashlight and slid the batteries into their proper places. Does it? I pressed the battery cover back into place and flicked the on and off switch. Let's try that again, shall we? Does it? I pressed the battery cover back into place and flicked the on switch off. God, this is a fucking tongue twister. Jesus Christ. Does it? I pressed the battery cover back into place and flicked the on-off switch to on. Fucking finally. Yes! A bright beam of light lit up the cubicles in front of me as the flashlight powered on. I swung the flashlight around, watching the beam of light with my eyes as it lit up darker spaces and dimmer areas. There has to be more, I said to myself as I slid the flashlight into one of the side pockets of the backpack, smiling as it rested snugly in its chosen compartment. I scanned the shelves even quicker than before, and almost used up rolls of tape. Oh, I skipped. My bad. I scanned the shelves even quicker than before, grabbing items such as batteries, strings, scrap metal, leather scraps, almond water, and almost used up rolls of tape. There's so much stuff! I cried as I filled the backpack with everything I could. A feeling of relief washed over me as the items I had now rested on a sack I could carry with me at all times. It's time to get out of here, I said to myself as I turned away from the cubicles. The cheery party music was now a subtle background noise as I sprinted towards the playground. The voices in my head had stopped, allowing me to avoid things such as being controlled to run on my death. That ladder is my ticket out of here, I said calmly as I slowed my pace, standing at the base of the massive house-sized playset in front of me. The cheery party music drifted through the playground as I took a step into the largest challenge in this new level fun. Into the Backrooms, Book 1, Chapter 12, Inside the Playgrounds. I carefully made my way through one of the many entrances to the playground, entering a maze of box chambers and skinny staircases made up of squishy playground materials that led to hundreds of slides and rooms. I squinted in the darkness as I made my way around squishy foam pillars and obstacles. I passed a short, flat yellow plastic slide and began making my way up a dark yet colorful staircase. It's so dark in here, I said softly as feelings of anxiety rose in my chest, making my breathing more rushed and shallow. I turned left, almost running into the mesh fabric window that blocked the corridor to the left of the staircase before taking a step back. Why so many dead ends? I said nervously as fear began to make its way into the main picture again. Turned right and entered a large cube-shaped room, a wall of squishy blue foam blocking any methods of moving forwards in this room. From this room. Man, guys, it is 11 o'clock at night. I'm so sorry, I'm reading the best I can. A small rope ladder leading to a small vent-sized corridor laid on the wall to my left, and a wall of spinnable plastic gears laid on the wall to my right. I guess I'll go left, I mumbled as I began making my way through the dark and over to the small rope ladder. I wrapped my fingers around the thin rope, testing to see if it could handle my weight, before beginning the climb up it. I slung the backpack I found over my right arm and crawled into the small, cramped tunnel. My shoulders were smashed as I shimmied my way through the hole, pushing forwards using my toes as I struggled not to feel claustrophobic. Why is this an option? I said under my breath as I spotted an opening up ahead. I pushed as far as I could, quickly making my way through the small, square-shaped tunnel to the other side. My chest burned as it became harder to breathe, my head growing heavy as a wave of fatigue hit me. Almost there, I said to myself as I pushed forwards again, and again, and again. My legs grew sore as my body dreamed of a breath of fresh air, my lungs craving pure, fresh oxygen. I exhaled lightly before kicking off one last time, pushing me out of the small cramped tunnel and down a soft, padded fabric staircase. I rolled multiple times before slamming onto the mat below, my breath instantly being knocked out of me. Fuck. Oh my god. I panted as the backpack dug deep into my chest. I moved it away, allowing the new mark in my skin to form. I'm too big for this, I muttered as I tossed the backpack a couple of feet in front of me and stood up. I looked around, only being able to see darkness and a faint outline of the areas around me before I crouched down and opened the backpack again. Flashlight, it's too dark. I grabbed one, right? I said to myself as I blindly felt around inside the bag. My fingers brushed the cold metal handle of the flashlight and I pulled it out of the bag and flicked it on. Yes, I said as I moved the flashlight around, observing my surroundings. Since I had fallen down a stairwell, I was put down one level on the playset, putting me at 8 feet up instead of the goal I needed, which was 40. Where do I go? I asked myself as I shined the flashlight north, then west, then south, and lastly east. Only 2 other paths were visible, the first one being a fabric mesh ramp up, and the second one being a circular tunnel that stretched out into the darkness. Fabric mesh ramp it is, I muttered as I slung my backpack over my shoulder and gripped the flashlight in my right hand. I began making the climb up the hole-filled ramp, my feet constantly slipping through the gaps, and at one point my entire arm did. Fuck this, I mumbled as I reached the top. I'd gained about 5 feet in height, the goal of reaching the top now much, much, much closer. I looked around, shining the flashlight on each wall as I tried to decide where to go next. It all just goes straight. I need to go up, I said angrily as I began to get fed up with the maze of children's play stuff. My eyes darted left, a feeling of fear shooting into my chest as I spotted a set of white, bright eyes staring at me. It only lasted a single second, if anything. No, let me the fuck out of here. I thought there was an end to the entities here. There was no entities here, I said as I scrambled back. I kicked away, darting left to avoid the entity that had now completely disappeared and crawled rapidly up a soft, padded yellow mat to the other floor of the playground. The sounds of silence began to fill my ears as I realized the cheery party music had now vanished completely. How deep am I in this place? I cried as anxiety and panic began to set in. I crawled up another mat before reaching an opening. I gripped my flashlight tightly as I shined it around the dome-shaped chamber. There's no way, I said as my voice and my breath caught in my throat. The chamber was connected to 8 more corridors, each one longer and more mysterious than the last. I ran to the center of the room and looked up to see another rope ladder that was hidden in the darkness. I dropped my flashlight on the ground and jumped up, my fingers grazing the bottom rung of the ladder before I fell back down again. Shit, I just barely touch it when I jump. I looked around, scanning the surrounding area for a box or a stool or something. A feeling of dread set in as I realized I couldn't reach this ladder. I'd be trapped here for way longer than I had intended to be. Nothing, I choked as I grabbed my flashlight from the ground and slid it into my bag, making sure to turn it off so I didn't waste any battery. You know what, just try again, I said to myself as I slung my backpack over my shoulder and looked up at the rope ladder. I gathered confidence before jumping up, my fingers seeming to reach for the sky as I grabbed the rope ladder with one hand. The difference in strength causing me to be ripped from the ladder by gravity and thrown to the ground. My knees buckled under me as I hit the ground with a crunch. My hands burned as my palms grew warm with blood. I cried out in pain, tears filling my eyes as my hands burned with immense pain. I stared at my bloodied palms in the darkness, my breath catching in my throat as I realized reaching the ladder was close to impossible without a stool or something that made it easier to reach it. I need a stepladder or a box, I said, trying to hide the pain that tore into my right palm. I looked around nervously before my eyes landed on a small plush cube, the tiny box-like object having been hidden in the darkness. I slowly got to my feet, trying to ignore the burning pain in my hand as I made my way over to the small plushy cube in the corner. I stopped right in front of it, readjusting the backpack on my back as I picked it up with my left hand. I gripped it tightly, slowly stumbling over to the base of the ladder before setting the cube down. I need to fix my wound, I mumbled softly as I looked around. All I had was the clothes I was wearing for cloth. I hesitated before grabbing a part of my shirt that already had a hole, ripping it off in one long strap. You should make it better. I winced before wrapping the shredded fabric around my right palm, tucking the end piece of the fabric under the makeshift bandage to solidify it just a bit more. I looked up at the ladder just above me, trying to determine whether or not I wanted the ladder again after the injuries it had given me. Just do it. It's the only way, I said softly, my voice calm even through the excruciating pain I was experiencing within. I carefully stepped on the plush cube, causing the ladder to grow much closer. I hesitated before jumping up slightly, grabbing the bottom of the rung with both hands before pulling myself up, my legs dangling over the darkness before I grabbed the second rung. My right palm burned as I slowly climbed the next few rungs, using every bit of my strength and stopping every few minutes to rest and calm myself down. I gasped as I spotted the ceiling of the chamber of the playground I was in, the exit hatch being somewhere just above me. I quickly climbed the rest of the rungs before exiting the dome and climbing onto the roof of the playground. I exhaled, my lungs burning from the large amount of air I had held within them while climbing as I collapsed onto the playground roof. Yes! Oh my God, I'm so close, I whispered as I grew weary and alone. Feelings of fear and sadness filled my body as I looked around me, lying on the squishy padded roof of the dome as I scanned my surrounding area for the exit hatch. My eyes landed on the faint outline of a ladder in the distance, the ladder to my way out. There, I said quietly as I slowly gathered the strength to stand up. My head spun as I slowly stumbled through the darkness towards the escape hatch. Took a slow step forward, not seeing the massive gap before losing my balance. Fuck! I hit the concrete. Fuck, not that. Fuck! I hit the padded beam below my feet with my chest, my body sliding off of it instantly as I fell 9 feet to the ceiling of the platform below. The air was knocked out of me as I stared up into the darkness with immense pain pulsing through my body. No, I groaned as the air around me grew cold. I shivered, my chest heaving slowly. I was so exhausted. I need to get back to that ladder, I whispered as my vision began to go in and out. I groaned in pain as my vision faded out fully once. Why now? I said quietly as my vision wavered once more. My head pounded as my eyes fell on a set of white eyes staring at me from above. The creature was completely covered by the darkness, causing the last thing I saw to be a set of white eyes watching me as I fell out of reality once more. As a 12-chapter checkpoint, the next level is not only not real in the Backrooms fandom, but I also just want to say that I'm trying my best with this, and I am reading out loud instead of using AI, and I hope you all understand. The storyline will continue every single day until I run out of oxygen and run out of chapters. So keep watching, and leave a comment, a like, and consider subscribing for a cookie. I'll see you guys in the next chapter. Goodbye. Well, this will be a whole completion, so not goodbye, but you'll find the next chapter in like 10 seconds.